Chapter 1056. Lin Yu naturally didn't know what happened after he left. He was walking toward Chaos Demon Supremacy's residence with everyone. This was asked by a merchant who just passed by a stall. Because everyone had walked for a distance, the merchant didn't know what happened just now. Seeing Lin Yu asking, he answered him with a smile. Although it was called Chaos Demon Island, it occupied a huge area. After walking for nearly an hour, everyone arrived at the place where Chaos Demon Supremacy lived. This was a building similar to the City Lord's mansion, standing in the middle of other buildings. The two guards standing at the door were both at the peak of the four-symbol state, and they were only one step away from the 10,000 soul state. It was enough to show the nobility of this place. At this moment, outside the building, there were more than a dozen trucks carried by beasts. They were driven by the people of the 13th Sea region, but there was no one in the trucks. Seeing this scene, Lin Yu snorted softly. It seemed that this group of people had the same destination as them. They were probably not seeking help, such as their Sea Lord. However, Lin Yu didn't take it to heart. Not to mention a Sea Lord, even if these supremacies of Realm C attacked him together, Lin Yu wouldn't be afraid. In Realm C, apart from Sea God, only the Realm Sea Lord could pose a threat to Lin Yu. "Who are you?" Noticing the figures of Lin Yu and the others, one of the guards stepped forward and asked solemnly. "We are here to visit Chaos Demon Supremacy." Lin Yu smiled faintly. "Visit Supremacy? Then do you have an invitation?" The guard didn't let down his guard because of Lin Yu's words and continued to ask. "Of course." Lin Yu nodded, then quietly looked at the two guards at the door. In the eyes of the two guards, Lin Yu took out an invitation from his storage ring. They didn't find anything suspicious in their inspection. After a few breaths, the eyes of the two guards suddenly regained their clarity. Without waiting for Lin Yu to say anything, they took the initiative to open the door for Lin Yu and the others. "Guests, please come in." Ignoring the surprised gazes of the people behind him, Lin Yu calmly led them in. The Qilin finally asked after they had traveled a certain distance away, unable to hold back its curiosity. "What method did you use just now to make them let us in?" The Archaeosaurus knew that the two guards were weak and could be killed with a single slap of his finger. However, he could not muddle through like Lin Yu. "It's just a little trick. Not worth mentioning." Lin Yu smiled faintly. He naturally obtained this ability from the 10,000 souls seal of the ancient mystic bird. Although the effect wasn't obvious when Lin Yu faced strong enemies, and it could even cause a backlash if he used it carelessly, it was extremely useful under certain circumstances. At this moment, a maid came from the side. Before Lin Yu and the others could speak, she took the initiative to lead them to the VIP room. Because she had already received news from the guards at the door that these people came to see Chaos Demon Venerable with an invitation. After pouring tea for them, the maid said respectfully, "Honorable guests, Venerable is receiving other guests. Please wait for a moment." Hearing the maid's words, Lin Yu raised his eyebrows. "Take us there now." After hearing the conversations of the merchants on the street, he could naturally determine who was talking to Chaos Demon Venerable. It should be the Sea Lord of the 13th Sea region. Perhaps his subordinates were also there describing what happened before. The maid's eyes were in a trance for a moment, then she nodded. "I understand." Under Lin Yu's illusion, the maid led them to a room. "Venerable is inside." After saying that, the maid bowed and left. The door was not locked. Lin Yu only needed to push it lightly to open it. There were several people standing in the room, and two people were sitting on chairs at the side. One of them was Chaos Demon Venerable, whom Lin Yu had met once before, and the other had the aura of the Spirit King realm. He should be the Sea Lord of the 13th Sea region. The information from those merchants isn't very accurate. Lin Yu thought to himself. Previously, they all said that the Sea Lord of the 13th Sea region was about to break through to the Spirit King realm. However, from Lin Yu's perception, He could tell that this person had not only broken through to the Spirit King realm, but his realm was also very stable. The people standing at the side were the guards who met Lin Yu before. The moment they saw Lin Yu and the others, their faces turned pale. "Sea Lord! Sir, it's him." The captain of the guard suppressed the fear in his heart and said in a trembling voice. Hearing the captain's words, the Sea Lord turned his head and looked coldly at Lin Yu and the others. "It's you guys who sneaked up on my commander, right?" The reason why the Sea Lord of the 13th Sea Region said this was because the captain and the others reported to him that Lin Yu took the opportunity to sneak up on him, and Commander Chui lost his life because of his carelessness. If it was not for the sneak attack, Commander Chui would have died, and his subordinates would have been unscathed. They would have been severely punished. Therefore, in the eyes of the Sea Lord of the 13th Sea Region, Lin Yu should be a powerful 10,000 Spirit Realm expert who was good at sneak attack. However, a guy with such strength could not cause any trouble in front of him. This time, he came to Chaos Demon Island and was on an equal footing with Chaos Demon Venerable, which made him very confident. Chaos Demon Venerable also looked over and squinted his eyes to observe Lin Yu and the others. Because Lin Yu did not remove his disguise, he did not recognize Lin Yu's identity. However, he felt a little uneasy because he could not see through Lin Yu and the others. Hearing the cold question of the 13th Sea Lord, Lin Yu smiled faintly. "Yes, it's me." Seeing Lin Yu's calm face, the 13th Sea Lord was annoyed. The aura of the Spirit King realm burst out from his body, and a powerful airwave spread to the surroundings. The guards beside him could not maintain their balance under this aura, and all of them fell to the ground. When Chaos Demon Venerable saw this, he frowned slightly but did not say anything. This was his residence, and the 13th Ocean Lord was not giving him any face by revealing his aura in front of him. However, the 13th Ocean Lord had broken through to the Spirit King realm, and would soon become a supremacy. There was nothing Chaos Demon Supremacy could do about it, but he was slightly displeased. After all, the 13th Sea Lord was just one of his subordinates before this. Chapter 1057. However, after breaking through to the Spirit King realm, one could obtain the qualifications to become a supremacy. This was a rule set by the Realm Sea Lord. Therefore, even though Supremacy Chaos Demon felt it was unfair, he did not dare to have any other thoughts. Lin Yu remained calm when he saw how furious the 13th Ocean Lord was. When the 13th Ocean Lord saw this scene, he finally could not hold it in anymore. He raised his hands and a powerful glory energy condensed into a shockwave that swept towards Lin Yu and the others. Although Lin Yu's expression did not change under his aura, which made the 13th Ocean Lord feel a little strange and even a little uneasy, he still chose to attack. After all, he had broken through to the Spirit King realm and was about to accept the Realm Sea Lord's test. He was under the protection of the Realm Sea Lord. Even if Lin Yu and the others hid their true strength, they were still Spirit King realm experts. They had similar strength to the 13th Ocean Lord, so they did not dare to do anything to him, because attacking him at this point in time was equivalent to slapping the Realm Sea Lord's face. Facing the 13th Ocean Lord's attack, Lin Yu's eyes narrowed and the corner of his mouth curled into a sneer. He had long expected the 13th Ocean Lord to attack him, and this was the opportunity he had been waiting for. The 13th Ocean Lord placed his hands in front of him and controlled a large amount of glory energy. After all, this was Supremacy Chaos Demon's residence, so he still had some scruples. He had to concentrate fully to prevent his attack from affecting the surroundings. However, just as he was about to hit Lin Yu's figure suddenly disappeared from his sight. What? The 13th Ocean Lord was stunned for a moment and stopped his attack. However, at this moment, he suddenly heard a very subtle sound behind him. If he had not broken through to the Spirit King realm and his perception had greatly improved, he would definitely not have noticed it. The 13th Ocean Lord hurriedly wanted to retract his hands that were controlling the glory energy and turn around at the same time. However, due to his surrounding environment, the 13th Ocean Lord's movements were still a little slow. Whoosh! A sharp voice rang out. The 13th Ocean Lord felt a chill in his heart, followed by a sharp pain. Stop! This voice did not come from the 13th Ocean Lord. Instead, it came from Supremacy Chaos Demon, who was quietly watching from the side. Before this, the Venerable of Chaos Demon had always felt that the 13th Sea Lord and Lin Yu were not as powerful as him. Even if the situation escalated, he would be able to deal with it. If the 13th Sea Lord was no match for the Venerable of Chaos Demon, he would be able to stop Lin Yu. However, if Lin Yu was no match for the Venerable of Chaos Demon, all he needed to do was watch quietly. After all, he didn't know Lin Yu's current appearance, and whether he lived or died had nothing to do with him. But the moment Lin Yu attacked, Chaos Demon Supremacy realized that his previous guess was simply ridiculously wrong. If he wasn't an outsider, he wouldn't have been able to catch a glimpse of Lin Yu's figure. By the time he managed to react, Lin Yu had already teleported behind the 13th Oceanic Lord. He pulled out a sword from thin air and pierced the 13th Oceanic Lord from the back. A trail of blood flowed out of the 13th Sea Lord's mouth. He slowly lowered his head and looked down. He only saw the tip of a sword piercing through his chest. It was only at this moment that he finally understood what had happened in that instant. This guy, how could he be so strong? The 13th Oceanic Lord's body trembled. His heart was filled with doubts. He stretched out his hands, wanting to touch the sword to save himself from this hopeless situation. But his actions were naturally detected by Lin Yu. Lin Yu smiled faintly. Continuing to struggle is a waste of energy. After saying that, Lin Yu injected glory chi into the Emperor's sword. A crisp sword hum came from the sword. Seeing this scene, Chaos Demon Supremacy's expression became flustered. He quickly shouted, "Have mercy. He is the Master of Realm C's man. If you touch him, you will also anger the Master of Realm C." Chaos Demon Supremacy naturally didn't care about the 13th Oceanic Lord's life or death. If the 13th Oceanic Lord died, it was equivalent to not dividing the territories of the Supremacies. It was still considered a good thing. But things weren't that simple. The Master of Realm C was about to test the 13th Oceanic Lord. If the 13th Oceanic Lord died in front of him at this time, he would definitely be punished. Chaos Demon Supremacy didn't want to be punished because of this. Lin Yu's actions didn't slow down in the slightest because of Chaos Demon Supremacy's voice. Along with the sword hum, the surrounding space trembled as though it was being squeezed. The 13th Oceanic Lord's body disintegrated under this attack and turned into dust. Even the blood in his body was annihilated without a single drop spilling out. "All right." Lin Yu calmly put away the Emperor's sword in his hand and said faintly. When the 13th Oceanic Lord's guards saw this scene, they were so frightened that they almost fainted. That was their Lord Oceanic Lord. Moreover, his strength was different from ordinary Oceanic Lords. He was at the Spirit King realm. How could he be killed so easily by this guy in front of them? Chaos Demon Supremacy widened his eyes in disbelief. Firstly, he didn't expect Lin Yu to still choose to attack after hearing what he said. Wasn't he afraid of the wrath of the Master of Realm C? Secondly, it was because of the strength that Lin Yu displayed. Although he only revealed the aura of the Spirit King realm in the attack just now, he could easily kill an existence of the same realm in an instant. How exquisite was the skill needed to do that? You! Chaos Demon Supremacy pointed at Lin Yu and said hesitantly. At that moment, he didn't know what to say because after knowing Lin Yu's strength, his state of mind had changed. Previously, he didn't take the 13th Oceanic Lord and Lin Yu seriously. However, because of Lin Yu's attack just now, he thought of many things. If he was the 13th Oceanic Lord, would he be able to survive in that situation just now? Chaos Demon's supremacy wasn't confident. It could even be said that he couldn't find a way to dodge that move just now. In this way, Lin Yu had become someone who could kill him in his heart. Naturally, he had to be cautious. This has nothing to do with you. I'll tell the Master of Realm C when I see him. Lin Yu turned around and said indifferently, causing the people of the 13th Oceanic Lord to tremble. All right. Hearing Lin Yu's words, Chaos Demon's supremacy was stunned and then nodded blankly. Since Lin Yu said so, Chaos Demon's supremacy knew that he had no other choice. Not to mention his relationship with the 13th Oceanic Lord, it wasn't worth it for him to take revenge. Even if he really attacked Lin Yu, the person who would die would probably be him. Chapter 1058. So, where is the Realm Sea Lord? Lin Yu asked Supremacy Chaos Demon with a smile on his face. Huh! Supremacy Chaos Demon blinked, not understanding the question for a moment. In his eyes, Lin Yu easily killed the 13th Sea Lord and then casually said that he would talk to the Realm Sea Lord. He felt that Lin Yu should be a big shot. Even if he wasn't as strong as the Realm Sea Lord, he must have a similar identity. Who would have thought that he didn't even know where the Realm Sea Lord was? Who is this guy? Supremacy Chaos Demon looked at Lin Yu with a complicated expression and then slowly said, There is a temple in the Realm Sea. The Realm Sea Lord has been staying there. If you want to go, I can lead the way. Previously, the 13th Sea Lord came to Chaos Demon Island because he needed to take the test to meet the Realm Sea Lord. He needed to bring the 13th Sea Lord there. Although the 13th Sea Lord was dead now, Supremacy Chaos Demon still had to meet the Realm Sea Lord no matter what. As for leading the way for Lin Yu, since Supremacy Chaos Demon could control the entire Chaos Demon Sea, he naturally wouldn't be stupid. He knew that although Lin Yu didn't know where the Realm Sea Lord was, he could force him with his strength. At that time, he would still have to bring him there. Since that was the case, he might as well take the initiative to find a way out. Okay, then I'll have to trouble you to bring us there. Seeing that Supremacy Chaos Demon was so rational, Lin Yu nodded with a smile. This way, he wouldn't have to waste a lot of effort. Although Supremacy Chaos Demon was a veteran Spirit King realm expert, he was definitely not as easy to deal with as the 13th Sea Lord who had just advanced. Moreover, he knew of Lin Yu's strength and was already on guard. But if it was to deal with him, Lin Yu still didn't need to spend too much effort. After I've entrusted the matters here, we can leave. Supremacy Chaos Demon called his subordinates over and instructed them to deal with some ordinary matters. Then, he suddenly remembered that there were some people from the 13th Sea Lord, so he asked Lin Yu, How should we deal with these people? Although Chaos Demon Venerable did not know the guards of the 13th Sea region, he knew that they had a conflict with Lin Yu from their narration before Lin Yu came. Now that the 13th Ocean Lord was dead, he naturally had to ask for Lin Yu's opinion. The guards of the 13th Sea area were lying on the ground in fear that Lin Yu would notice them. However, after hearing Chaos Demon Venerable's words, they started to tremble. Even the 13th Sea Lord had been killed by Lin Yu. Wouldn't they be like ants in front of Lin Yu? Lin Yu pondered for a moment. His drawn-out voice made everyone's hearts hang in suspense. You can do whatever you want with those people who have offended you. Lin Yu looked at Chaos Demon Supremacy with a faint smile and threw the question back to him. Hearing this answer, not only were the guards of the 13th Sea region stunned, but even Chaos Demon Venerable was stunned. However, Chaos Demon Venerable soon reacted and then looked at these people and snorted coldly. Blind guys, you'll have to see clearly in your next life. Then, a powerful glory chi erupted from Chaos Demon Venerable's body. It swept over under the desperate eyes of the people of the 13th Sea region. Under this attack, these people lost their breath one by one. At the same time, Chaos Demon Venerable called his subordinates and ordered them to kill those who did not enter the 13th Sea region. For Chaos Demon Venerable, one side was the people of the 13th Sea region who had lost their Sea Lord, and the other side was Lin Yu, whose identity was unknown, and who was extremely powerful. Between the two options, Supremacy Chaos Demon would naturally be able to make the correct decision. Seeing that Chaos Demon Venerable had resolved the matter of the 13th Sea region, Lin Yu raised his eyebrows. This was a ruthless person, but which person who could cultivate to the Spirit King realm and become a venerable wasn't like this? It didn't take more than the time for an incense stick to burn to settle everything properly. After Chaos Demon Venerable gestured to Lin Yu, everyone left the residence together. When walking out, Lin Yu also noticed that the demonic beast carriages that were parked outside the 13th Sea region had disappeared. It seemed that Chaos Demon Venerable's subordinates were very efficient. Chaos Demon Venerable asked someone to transport a warship and then led Lin Yu and the others to board. Then, he locked the destination to the temple where the realm's Sea Lord was. After asking, Lin Yu also found out that because the distance was not too far, it would take about 2 hours to reach the temple from Chaos Demon Island. 2 hours later, through the transparent outer wall of the warship, Lin Yu saw the temple that Chaos Demon Venerable mentioned. Instead of calling it a temple, it was more like a small island, but in the shape of a huge temple. Many people were working in the temple. It was very similar to the Chaos Demon Island that Lin Yu and the others had seen before. There were actually so many people in the temple. It seemed that the Realm Sea Lord's presence here was not a secret. Lin Yu also understood at this time why Chaos Demon Venerable looked at him with such a strange gaze when he asked where the Realm Sea Lord was. Just as Lin Yu and the others were about to reach the temple, in a large hall of the temple, several people with tyrannical auras were sitting here and chatting with each other. "I don't know why Sir called us here this time. I still have many things to do in the boundless sea." The one who said this was Venerable Wuya, who had interacted with Lin Yu for a while. At this moment, he was sighing with a bitter face. Ever since the sequence battle, when he was separated from Lin Yu, Venerable Wuya realized that the area he was in charge of was weak. Not to mention someone as strong as Lin Yu, there was no one in the younger generation who could compete with him. Therefore, after returning to the boundless sea, he invested a large amount of resources in the sea areas he was in charge of. Moreover, he did not fix the ranking of the sea areas but used strength to determine the ranking. Although the strength of the younger generation in the boundless sea had increased under his support, he was also very busy at the same time. How can you and I guess Sir's thoughts? However, I heard some rumors that the meeting this time is related to the Chaos Demon Sea, Venerable D. Luo said with a mysterious expression. Chaos Demon Sea? Hearing his words, the other venerables pricked up their ears. At the same time, they also noticed that in the hall, all the venerables had already arrived. Only Chaos Demon Venerable was missing. Chapter 1059. However, at this moment, Sovereign D. Luo closed his mouth. What gossip? What does it have to do with the Chaos Demon Sea? Continue. Everyone began to urge him. Seeing that everyone wanted to hear, Sovereign D. Luo chuckled and said, "There are only a few meetings. It's either something big has happened in the Realm Sea or a cultivator, who has just broken through to the Spirit King realm, is going to take the Lord's test. Not long ago, I heard that an Ocean Lord of the Chaos Demon Sea obtained a great opportunity and has a chance of breaking through to the Spirit King realm. Isn't the purpose of this meeting obvious?" Hearing Sovereign D. Luo's words, everyone nodded. According to what he said, the possibility of this happening was indeed very high. However, they didn't feel anything about this happening. It could even be said that they didn't want it to happen. This was because once this Ocean Lord passed the test of the Realm Sea Lord, he would become a new sovereign and rule over a part of the sea. However, the Realm Sea's area was limited, already divided and occupied by the current ocean lords. Even if there were new supreme experts, they could only separate out a piece of land from the sea they controlled, which was equivalent to taking away their territory. Everyone naturally wasn't happy, but because of the realm Sea Lord, they couldn't say anything and fell silent. At this moment, a few people walked in. It was Lin Yu and the others. Seeing this, the sovereigns were dumbfounded. Didn't an ocean lord break through to the Spirit King realm? Why were there so many people here? Chaos Demon Yu. Sovereign Di Luo asked in confusion. Seeing their confused gazes, Chaos Demon Sovereign was at a loss for words. How should he explain this situation? After thinking for a while, he still couldn't come up with an answer. Chaos Demon Sovereign looked at Lin Yu and wanted him to answer himself. Facing the gazes of the sovereigns, Lin Yu's face was calm and he didn't seem nervous at all. At this moment, a majestic aura descended upon the main hall. It contained immense power. Sensing this aura, the sovereigns, including Chaos Demon Sovereign beside Lin Yu, all bowed. Lin Yu, Yuja Kitami, and the others stood where they were. They felt the aura but did not move. Even though this aura was beyond the realm of the Spirit King realm, it was enough to greet people like the Archaeosaurs, so how could they be afraid? So when Realm Sea Lord appeared in the center of the Great Hall, Lin Yu's group still had no change in expression. Realm Sea Lord was a man with a majestic figure. His azure sea-like hair hung down to his waist. When he saw Lin Yu and the others, he was surprised. He then asked Honorable Chaos Demon, Chaos Demon, where is the Ocean Lord under you who broke through to the Spirit King realm? It shouldn't be them. Even though Realm Sea Lord hadn't seen the 13th Sea Lord and didn't recognize Lin Yu and the others, he could tell with a single glance that Lin Yu and the others weren't from Realm Sea. Hearing the Realm Sea Master's question, Supremacy Chaos Demon had a bitter expression. He knew that what followed was the main event. My lord, just as Supremacy Chaos Demon was about to explain, Lin Yu directly said to Realm Sea Lord, the person you mentioned was killed by me. Suddenly, the entire Great Hall fell into silence. The Ocean Lord who just broke through to the Spirit King realm. Was he killed? Such a thing actually happened. All the supremacies looked at Lin Yu in disbelief. They were surprised that he dared to attack the Ocean Lord. After all, the Ocean Lord was about to take the test of Realm Sea Lord. At the same time, they were also surprised that Lin Yu could kill a Spirit King realm expert. Didn't that mean that he also had such strength? But they didn't feel any aura from Lin Yu. Realm Sea Lord was stunned at first, then he was furious. You actually dared to kill that Ocean Lord? Do you know what he's going to do next? The reason why Realm Sea Lord set up this rule and protected those cultivators who were about to break through to the Spirit King realm was to increase the overall strength of Realm Sea. Although the combined strength of the various sea regions of Realm Sea was stronger than the primitive continent's 4 great families, it was still far from enough when compared to the Heaven Domain. Moreover, during this period of time, Realm Sea Lord also received news that there seemed to be some big movements in the Heaven Domain. Therefore, he was anxious to increase the strength of Realm Sea, but he didn't expect that the Ocean Lord who just broke through to the Spirit King realm would be killed. If it was unintentional and he didn't know about it beforehand, it would be fine. He only needed to pay with his life. But if he did it knowingly, then don't blame him for being ruthless. A fierce light flashed in Realm Sea Lord's eyes as he stared at Lin Yu's figure. At the same time, his powerful aura locked onto Lin Yu. Facing this situation, Lin Yu only smiled faintly and said, "Of course I know." Hearing Lin Yu's words, Realm Sea Lord finally couldn't bear it anymore. He ignored Venerable Chaos Demon, who still wanted to say something, and prepared to capture Lin Yu. Just at this time, Lin Yu took the initiative to disperse his disguise and revealed his original appearance. You are? Realm Sea Lord frowned and looked at Lin Yu. The several venerables at the side were stunned, especially Venerable Wuya. He rubbed his eyes and shouted in disbelief. Lin Yu. It's actually you. The other venerables had met Lin Yu once during the sequence battle and had some impression of him. At this moment, they all looked at him in surprise. After Realm Sea Lord heard this name, he took a deep breath and said with uncertainty, "You are Lin Yu?" Realm Sea Lord hadn't seen Lin Yu with his own eyes. He only knew that Lin Yu had once represented their Realm Sea and obtained first place in the sequence battle. He had won a huge amount of resources for their Realm Sea. If it was really Lin Yu, even if he killed a Sea Lord, it wasn't unforgivable. However, wasn't Lin Yu already brought to the Heaven region? Why did he appear here again? Could it be that he came to Realm Sea on behalf of the Heaven region? A hint of vigilance appeared in Realm Sea Lord's eyes. His attitude towards the Heaven region had always been neutral. Even if he didn't befriend them, he wouldn't offend them either. Because he had once obtained information related to the six-winged divine king from the sea god and knew what kind of person he was. He could even kill his own father. It was too dangerous to form an alliance with such a person. Yes. Facing Venerable Wuya's question, Lin Yu smiled and nodded. Venerable Wuya came to Lin Yu's side. Seeing Lin Yu's familiar appearance, he confirmed that this was indeed the real person. Chapter 1060. But at this juncture, it wasn't good for Venerable Wuya to continue asking, so he secretly made up his mind. If the Realm Sea Lord still planned to attack Lin Yu, then even if he was punished, he had to stop him. As for the people behind Lin Yu, they had different reactions after hearing the name Lin Yu. Although Yuja Kitami didn't know Lin Yu's real name, Lin Yu had already told her about his disguise and name, so she was mentally prepared. At this moment, after knowing Lin Yu's real identity, Yuja Kitami didn't have any strange feelings in her heart. She was just surprised by his identity. She didn't expect that Lin Yu's identity was actually like this. Platycodon grandiflorum was completely shocked. Only now that she knew Lin Yu's identity, did she finally understand what happened before. For example, the six-winged divine king asked her to capture Lin Yu, but she didn't find Lin Yu by following the clue of Baijiu. It turned out that Lin Yu had always been by her side. After the Archaeosaurus and Goldie heard Lin Yu's identity, they didn't feel anything. The Archaeosaurus already knew Lin Yu's name and identity. Otherwise, it would be impossible for anyone else to pass through that secret realm. In Goldie's eyes, it didn't matter. She and Lin Yu had only traveled together for a short time, so it didn't matter what his name was, as long as he was still the same person. Although you obtained the honor of being first in the sequence battle for the Realm Sea and obtained a lot of resources, there must be a reason why you killed an Ocean Lord, right? The Realm Sea Lord frowned and said to Lin Yu. As for the reason, he attacked me, so I killed him. Facing the Realm Sea Lord's question, Lin Yu said calmly. Lin Yu was not afraid of the master of the Realm Sea. With his current strength, he was not 100% confident in dealing with a ruler. But even if he couldn't win, he still had Goldie and Archaeosaurus. With the strength of the Archaeosaurus, dealing with a mere Realm Sea Lord, wasn't that incredibly simple? After hearing Lin Yu's answer, Realm Sea Lord frowned and looked towards Venerable Chaos Demon. My lord, that is indeed the case. Chaos Demon's supremacy nodded helplessly. However, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Looking at the current situation, it seemed that they would not fight. As for him, he would not be punished either. To him, this was naturally the situation he wanted to see the most. Seeing Chaos Demon Supremacy's affirmative attitude, the Realm Sea Lord pondered for a moment and then said slowly, I understand. I won't hold you responsible. However, for you to come to the Realm Sea this time, what kind of identity are you using? Weren't you brought to see that person when the sequence battle ended? Speaking up to hear, Realm Sea Lord looked towards the sky meaningfully. Seeing this scene, everyone clearly knew who the Realm Sea Lord was referring to. After all, everyone present was a supremacy, and had some understanding of the situation of the various forces. They knew that the Realm Sea Lord had always been very fearful of the Heaven Domain. Lin Yu naturally also heard what he wanted to express from his words. I know what you want to say, but after the sequence battle, I wasn't brought to the six-winged Divine King. If you want to talk about the relationship with the Heaven Domain, it should be hostile. Lin Yu said casually, but the information revealed in his words couldn't be ignored. Hearing Lin Yu's words, Realm Sea Lord's pupils constricted. He didn't expect that Lin Yu would actually have such an attitude towards the Heaven Domain. Moreover, from his words, he also heard that Lin Yu seemed to have discovered that the current relationship between the Realm Sea and the Heaven Domain wasn't harmonious. Otherwise, he wouldn't say such blunt words. All right. Lin Yu waved his hand and smiled faintly. There's no point in saying this now, but in the future we might become allies. But this time, I came to the Realm Sea for other things. Realm Sea Lord narrowed his eyes and looked carefully at Lin Yu. After a moment, he asked in a deep voice. What is it? He realized that he couldn't see through Lin Yu at all. Now, he had already placed him on the same level as himself. The supremacies on the side couldn't help but click their tongues when they saw how cautious the Realm Sea Lord was. They didn't expect that Lin Yu, who wasn't even at the 10,000 spirit realm before, could actually face the Realm Sea Lord directly. This kind of growth speed was simply terrifying. I came this time to see the Sea God. Tell me where the Sea God is, or you can summon him here. Hearing Lin Yu's words, Realm Sea Lord didn't hesitate and immediately shook his head. Impossible. The Sea God is the most honorable existence in my Realm Sea. Even I can't see him whenever I want. How can I let you disturb the Sea God? Lin Yu wasn't surprised by the Realm Sea Lord's rejection. From the perspective of the Realm Sea Lord, it was normal to not agree. If he agreed, Lin Yu would be surprised instead. But since Lin Yu planned to find the Sea God through the Realm Sea Lord, he naturally made plans in advance. I don't want to see the Sea God for no reason. The Sea God and I know each other. It's just that I don't know where he is. If you don't believe me, you can ask Supremacy Wuya. Lin Yu said calmly. Hearing Lin Yu's words, Realm Sea Lord was a little surprised at first. Then, he looked at Supremacy Wuya and asked, is there really such a thing? When Supremacy Wuya heard Lin Yu mention him, he was first stunned. Then, when he heard Realm Sea Lord's question, he quickly nodded. Previously, on the way to the sequence battle, Lin Yu and I met Lord Sea God. At that time, Lord Sea God showed an attitude of knowing Lin Yu. After they spoke a few words, Lord Sea God disappeared. Realm Sea Lord sighed. As the strongest existence in the entire Realm Sea, Sea God naturally wasn't someone who could meet just because they wanted to. Even if it was him, it wasn't an easy thing to meet the Sea God. However, from Supremacy Wuya's words, he could hear that the Sea God was indeed acquainted with Lin Yu. Otherwise, with the Sea God's situation, if he didn't take the initiative to appear, no one would be able to find him. Since that's the case, I can make an exception for you. After pondering for a moment, Realm Sea Lord finally nodded. Although the Sea God couldn't be easily summoned, Lin Yu's identity was different. Not only did he know the Sea God, he also seemed to have some kind of connection with the Heaven region. And the Sea God attached great importance to the Heaven region's situation. With these factors, summoning the Sea God wasn't abrupt. Thank you. Seeing Realm Sea Lord agree to his request, Lin Yu smiled and thanked him. However, don't be happy too early. Although I promised you, it's not certain whether Lord Sea God will appear or not. I can only pass on the message that you want to meet him. Realm Sea Lord explained to Lin Yu. Chapter 1061. Hearing Realm Sea Lord's words, Lin Yu nodded and wasn't too worried. If it was someone else, they would indeed need to consider this problem. But Lin Yu was different. When he had just arrived at Realm Sea, Sea God had taken the initiative to appear in front of him. Moreover, the commission Sea God received from the old Divine King was to test Lin Yu, so he definitely wouldn't ignore his summons. As for the previous meeting, Sea God didn't test Lin Yu because Lin Yu hadn't seen Vairocana Buddha at that time and learned about the Divine King's inheritance from him. Seeing that Lin Yu didn't object, Realm Sea Lord took out an item from his storage ring. It was a sphere emitting faint blue light, and there seemed to be water ripples lingering inside. This is the item used to summon Lord Sea God. After I activate this later, you only need to place your hand on it. As for whether Lord Sea God will appear or not, it will depend on your luck. Realm Sea Lord placed the faint blue water sphere on the table and said to Lin Yu, "I understand." Lin Yu replied with a calm expression. When the several venerables saw this scene, they didn't reveal a surprised expression. Because in the long time before, they had also seen Realm Sea Lord use this strange item to send a message to Sea God. However, Sea God wouldn't appear here according to Realm Sea Lord's wishes every time. In fact, compared to when he appeared, there was no response at all more times. As for whether Lin Yu could summon Sea God, these venerables weren't too optimistic. After all, that person had always been relatively cold. However, Venerable Wuya, who had met Sea God with Lin Yu before, had some confidence in his heart because he saw Sea God's attitude towards Lin Yu when he appeared that time. He even called Lin Yu an old friend. Buzz buzz buzz. Realm Sea Lord pointed his finger at the blue water ball on the table and sent out a strand of glorious energy to activate it. Immediately there was a tremor and at the same time, a special energy spread towards the surroundings. "It's your turn." The Realm Sea Lord looked at Lin Yu. "Send your glorious aura here." "Yes." Lin Yu stepped forward and placed his hand on it. At the same time, he controlled the glory chi in his body and slowly infused it. Suddenly, a violent aura surged within the blue water ball. The previously calm water ripples began to churn. At the same time, a deep blue light spread out, blocking everyone's line of sight. At the same time, in a certain place in Realm Sea, a slender figure covered in layers of dragon scales was swimming in the deep sea. This was the deep sea region, and it was tens of thousands of feet away from the surface of the sea. Due to the lack of light, a normal person's vision would become extremely narrow here, and they would only be able to see a few feet around them. From time to time, some terrifying auras would appear in the surroundings. Each of them was comparable to a venerable one, and some were even stronger. Nonetheless, after the owners of these auras noticed this figure, they quickly fled nearby. "He's here," a deep voice sounded, and the two dark golden pupils on the dragon's head emitted a faint light. "It's time to make a trip." With that, a powerful glorious aura condensed on the dragon's body, and the dragon's scales lit up one by one. Then, a shockwave appeared. The huge dragon body disappeared in an instant. The seawater didn't have any changes for a while. After a while, as if it was stirred up by a huge force, it formed a whirlpool and scattered to the surroundings. At this moment, the main hall fell into silence. Everyone silently looked at Lin Yu's figure, and their eyes revealed a trace of shock. They saw that Lin Yu was still in the same position as before when he touched the blue water ball with his hand. His eyes were tightly closed, but he wasn't infusing glorious aura into it. Instead, a powerful energy was gushing out from the water ball and being transmitted into Lin Yu's body. What's going on? Looking at the scene in front of him, the Realm Sea Lord was very puzzled, not knowing what the current situation was. Ever since the Sea God handed this water ball to him many years ago and told him that he could use this thing to transmit information to himself, the Realm Sea Lord had been using this water ball as a tool to communicate with the Sea God. After that, he used it countless times, but this situation had never happened. Moreover, the Realm Sea Lord had always been watching Lin Yu's actions. He didn't use any tricks and simply infused glorious aura into it. Who would have thought that energy would surge out from the water ball and flow into Lin Yu's body in the opposite direction? And under the influence of this energy, Lin Yu also closed his eyes and began to cultivate. Everyone on the side also looked at each other, not knowing what to do. However, Yuja Kitami and Platycodon grandiflorum weren't worried. From the current situation, this wouldn't do any harm to Lin Yu. And when the Archaeosaurus saw this scene, he nodded secretly and came to a realization. With his eyesight, he could naturally see that this water ball that was providing energy to Lin Yu was the test set by the sea god and also the reward he gave. Because the energy in this water ball wasn't stable and was full of violent aura, this kind of energy was very difficult to dissolve, and it was even more difficult to convert it into one's own glorious aura. And under the settings of the sea god, as long as Lin Yu came here and touched the water ball, the test would automatically begin. In the subsequent process, if Lin Yu could convert this violent energy into his own glorious aura, he would pass the test. At the same time, this energy contained the aura of the sea god, which was equivalent to obtaining the approval of the sea god. And if Lin Yu could absorb all the energy in the water ball, his cultivation would definitely soar. This was the reward. But if he couldn't convert and absorb this energy, not only would Lin Yu fail the test and obtain the approval, but he would also be injured by the violent energy, affecting his strength. That's a good move. The Archaeosaurus nodded with some praise. Although this test wasn't as huge as the one he set, it was very comprehensive. At this moment, Lin Yu's body was emitting a violent aura, and this aura was getting stronger and stronger with the energy surging out of the water ball. Lin Yu had to master how to convert this energy into glorious aura with the same attributes as his body in the shortest time possible. At the same time, the speed of the conversion had to match the speed of the release of energy from the water ball. Otherwise, the violent energy in his body would increase. Although Lin Yu's body was strong and could withstand this violent energy, there was still a limit. Chapter 1062. Once the violent energy accumulated in Lin Yu's body exceeded the upper limit, it would cause great damage. At that time, not only would Lin Yu not benefit, but he would also be injured. Thus, how to convert the energy in the water ball into glory energy was the most important thing for Lin Yu. Lin Yu's eyes were tightly shut, but his consciousness remained clear. From the moment the violent energy from the water ball surged into his body, he had already realized that this was a test for him. Thus, he had already started converting the energy in his body into glory energy. However, perhaps because it contained the aura of the sea god, this energy was not only violent but also difficult to convert. The violent energy rampaged through Lin Yu's body, but Lin Yu still maintained a calm expression. At this moment, he had already focused all of his attention on his body, searching for a pattern to convert the energy. This energy must be converted using a certain method and not using the glory energy in his body to dissolve it. Thus, he knew that grasping that method was considered passing the test. Just as Lin Yu was struggling with the violent energy in his body, there was a sudden distortion in the hall. Immediately after, a dragon's body drilled out of the distortion. Lord Sea God! Greetings, Lord Sea God! Seeing this figure, the realm Sea Lord and the other sovereigns bowed. Of course, they knew that the figure in front of them was the Sea God's incarnation. This was because the sea god's true body was several hundred meters long, so it was impossible for it to appear in the temple. The sea god had a cold expression after appearing, but when he shifted his gaze to the other side, he was suddenly stunned. This was because he saw the figure of the Archaeosaurus in the crowd. Although the Archaeosaurus had also changed his form and concealed his aura, the sea god still recognized him at a glance. Why are you here? The sea god had a look of disbelief. He knew very well that after their defeat against the six-winged Divine King, the Archaeosaurs had been holed up in a forest on the primitive continent and had been very isolated. Why was he here with Lin Yu? Hearing Sea God's question, Realm Sea Lord and the other venerables were all stunned. They didn't know who Sea God was talking to. However, in the next moment, their eyes widened because in their line of sight, it was actually the demonic beast that they had never seen before that opened its mouth to answer the Sea God. Of course I came here with that guy. Do you think I like coming here? Archaeosaurus said with a look of disdain. Although he was powerful, there were some instincts that were hard to change. For example, he hated water. If it wasn't for the fact that Lin Yu had to make a trip to see God's place, he wouldn't have come to Realm Sea no matter what. Humph. The Sea God snorted coldly before looking at Lin Yu with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Last time in Realm Sea, he sensed Lin Yu's aura, so he appeared in front of Lin Yu. At that time, what was Lin Yu's cultivation level? In less than a few months, he had already broken through to the Spirit King realm. If Lin Yu could pass his test and obtain the energy contained within, his cultivation level would increase by a large margin again. His strength is increasing very quickly, but Sea God suddenly thought of the news he received recently and his expression was slightly complicated. What's wrong? Archaeosaurus felt the change in Sea God's aura and asked with some confusion. Let's talk about it later. Sea God shook his head. Realm Sea Lord and the venerables on the side didn't know the identity of Archaeosaurus, but seeing how familiar he was with Sea God, they knew that he must be an extremely powerful demonic beast. Realm Sea Lord even guessed Archaeosaurus's identity based on his appearance, but he couldn't confirm it. At this moment, Lin Yu's violent aura became even more powerful and even vaguely felt that it was out of control. Seeing this scene, Yuja Kitami and Platycodon grandiflorum also became a bit nervous. Crack! Suddenly, cracks appeared on the outer wall of the blue water ball and kept spreading to the surroundings. At the same time, the speed at which the energy overflowed from the water ball sped up. Even Lin Yu's forehead was covered in a few drops of cold sweat. His body was close to saturation after being continuously injected with a large amount of energy. Just as everyone was nervously watching, the aura roaming in the hall suddenly decreased. Then, they saw Lin Yu's aura begin to skyrocket. Early stage Spirit King Realm. Middle stage Spirit King Realm. Late stage Spirit King Realm. In just a few dozen breaths, Lin Yu's cultivation broke through from early stage Spirit King Realm to late stage Spirit King Realm, crossing 2 realms in succession. Seeing this scene, everyone, including Realm Sea Lord, was dumbfounded. They had never seen such an exaggerated speed. Moreover, the weaker ones among them, such as Venerable Wuya and Venerable Chaos Demon, were only early stage Spirit King Realm, and had been stuck in this realm for many years. They knew how difficult it was to break through. But for Lin Yu, breaking through was as simple as drinking water. After a while, Lin Yu slowly opened his eyes and a glint flashed in them. The reward this time is not bad. Lin Yu lowered his head and clenched his fists. He could clearly feel the increase in his strength. At this moment, he also noticed that the Sea God was looking at him. We meet again. Lin Yu smiled faintly. At this moment, compared to the last time he met Sea God, it could be said that he was worlds apart. Not only did he know more information, but his strength had also increased by leaps and bounds. Yes. Sea God replied in a deep voice, but his expression was somewhat troubled. After a while, he continued, I have completed the task that the old Divine King entrusted to me. You can be considered to have passed the test and obtained my approval. But on account of our previous friendship, I want to tell you a new piece of news. Hearing Sea God's words, Lin Yu raised his eyebrows. He knew that Sea God was ranked second on the demon god list and was stronger than the Archaeosaurus, something that he remembered must be very important. Moreover, Sea God was similar to the Archaeosaurus and had a barrier with the heavenly region. This news might be related to the heavenly region. Thinking of this, Lin Yu could not help but prick up his ears, ready to listen carefully to Sea God's next words. When the Archaeosaurus heard Sea God's words, he also revealed a curious expression. He knew that this guy had always been steady, and when Sea God first appeared, his behavior was somewhat strange. It seemed that he was about to say something very important. Although Realm Sea Lord and the other venerables did not express their inner emotions, they silently focused their energy. Chapter 1063. However, at this moment, Poseidon glanced at them. Then, with a flash of light, a blue barrier surrounded him, Lin Yu and the Archaeosaurus. Seeing this, the Lord of the Realm Sea and the others scratched their heads awkwardly. Within the barrier, the Archaeosaurus said impatiently, "Hurry up and tell us. Don't pretend to be mysterious here." Poseidon glanced at him unhappily, but he still listened to him and said, "This news is related to the Qinyun region." The first sentence made Lin Yu and the Archaeosaurus serious. "Just a few days ago, my subordinate suddenly sent me news that the commander of the Dark Church in the Qinyun region, the Dark Priest, was captured," Poseidon said in a heavy tone. After hearing this news, Lin Yu was stunned. Then, anger rose in his heart. Even though Poseidon didn't say anything, he had already guessed the reason why the Dark Priest was captured. It was probably related to him. Sure enough, Poseidon continued in the next moment. The ones who captured the Dark Priest were from the Qinyun region, and the one who gave the order was the six-winged Divine King. According to the six-winged Divine King, the Dark Priest secretly helped Lin Yu, which allowed Lin Yu to escape. Poseidon's expression was a little complicated. After hearing this news, I also didn't know that the Dark Priest was one of the old Divine King's men. The Archaeosaurus asked Lin Yu curiously after hearing this. "Lin Yu, did the Dark Priest help you before?" Lin Yu nodded, but in his heart, he was thinking about the Dark Priest. As expected of the six-winged Divine King. It had been a while since the sequence battle. Lin Yu didn't expect him to still be able to find out that the Dark Priest had helped him. Regarding the Dark Priest, Lin Yu had to save him from both emotional and logical reasons. Even though Lin Yu knew very well that the six-winged Divine King didn't kill the Dark Priest directly after capturing him and didn't hide the news of the Dark Priest's capture, he must have set a trap for him. However, the Dark Priest wasn't just one of the old Divine King's men. During the sequence battle, he had also helped Lin Yu many times. From an emotional point of view, Lin Yu wouldn't leave him alone. From a rational point of view, the Dark Priest's true identity was the Heaven Demon King who was ranked 4th on the god list. He was very powerful. If they could save him, he would be a great help to them. After seeing Lin Yu nod, the sea god sighed and said, "From the looks of it, you seem to be planning to work together to deal with the six-winged God King. I can only wish you good luck." The primordial Qilin said unhappily, "What do you mean? Don't you plan to come with us?" The Archaeosaurus had a look of disdain. He had completely forgotten that he had the same attitude when he received Lin Yu's invitation. The sea god shook his head. "Forget it. From what I know, when the Dark Priest was captured by the Tianyu domain, the energy waves that erupted at the scene far exceeded that of an ordinary Emperor stage cultivator. It even reached our level. But in the end he was still captured." The sea god's tone was somewhat surprised. He didn't know the Dark Priest's true identity and was rather shocked by the power he had displayed. However, he continued, "Furthermore, the six-winged Divine King didn't even make a move this time. Just the other people from the Tianyu domain dealt with the Dark Priest." Even the primordial Qilin's face became rather grim when it heard that. Of course, he knew what the sea god meant by our level. It was the saint stage, which was above the emperor stage. It was currently the highest level in this world. The top 3 existences on the demon god ranking, as well as the 6-winged divine king and the boundless Vairocana Buddha, were all in this level. He was already surprised that the dark priest had reached this level. However, what he didn't expect was that there was actually someone who could stop the dark priest without the 6-winged divine king making a move. Just how many experts were there in the Tianyu domain? The Archaeosaurus looked at Lin Yu and realized that there was no fear on his face. I know that you and the 6-winged divine king are both in the saint stage. However, you can't defeat him even if you join forces. Is he really that strong? Lin Yu asked the Archaeosaurus and the sea god. Hearing this question, the 2 fellows were at a loss for words. After a while, the sea god slowly spoke. The 6-winged divine king is indeed very strong, but he's not completely invincible. If it's a one-on-one situation, there's no doubt that we're no match for him. However, if we join forces with the boundless Vairocana Buddha like before, it's very possible to defeat him. However, hearing this, Lin Yu frowned. Then why did we fail last time? Because there are all sorts of powerful restrictions in the realm of heaven. While weakening us outsiders, they will also strengthen the 6-winged divine king. That's why we lost. The sea god continued helplessly. Furthermore, ever since he found out that we saint stage existences had ill intentions towards him, the 6-winged divine king's main body has never left the realm of heaven's main body. He's simply in an invincible position. I see. At this moment, Lin Yu also understood why the 6-winged divine king would send an avatar every time he appeared, but his main body never appeared. It seemed that other than his previous guess that the 6-winged divine king needed to divert some of his strength to suppress the heavenly phoenix, there was another reason. He was afraid that the other experts would join forces and punish him. All right, I've already told you everything that needs to be said. The sea god said in a deep voice, as for helping you, only the Archaeosaurus would foolishly step forward to help you. If it was in the past, I might have done the same. However, the capture of the Dark Priest this time made me realize that the realm of heaven's strength is far more terrifying than we thought. Hearing the sea god's thoughts, Lin Yu was not surprised. From the sea god's perspective, the 6-winged divine king was an invincible existence as long as he did not leave the realm of heaven. Even if they joined forces, they would not be a match for the 6-winged divine king. Now that even the 6-winged divine king's subordinate had the strength of a saint stage expert, the sea god could not see any hope of victory. I can also tell you a piece of news. Lin Yu looked at the sea god who was about to leave and said calmly, "What?" Hearing Lin Yu's words, the sea god was stunned and asked. The reason why the Dark Priest is so strong is because his true identity is the demon king of the demon realm. He revealed this identity to me before. Chapter 1064. No wonder he could release the fluctuations of the saint realm. It turns out that this is the case. Then it makes sense. The sea god nodded with a look of realization on her face. But what's the point of telling me this? Anyway, I won't. Lin Yu didn't wait for him to finish and interrupted him. Since you don't want to help me because the Dark High Priest has been captured, what if I can rescue him? Hearing this, not only the sea god, but even the Archaeosaurus were shocked. When the sea god called him silly, the Archaeosaurus wanted to tell him that Lin Yu had a terrifying demonic beast like Bai Xiaoli in his body. Once he recovered to his peak state, it wouldn't be a problem for him to fight against the 6-winged divine king. However, they were interrupted by Lin Yu. The reason why Lin Yu didn't reveal Bai Xiaoli's aura was because the sea god had more considerations than the Archaeosaurus. He wasn't someone who could be convinced by revealing Bai Xiaoli's aura. Since that was the case, he might as well start from the source. The sea god said that if it weren't for the Dark High Priest, he might have helped. Then Lin Yu would solve the Dark High Priest's problem. After all, it was something he had to do. Sure enough, after hearing Lin Yu's words, The sea god looked at Lin Yu suspiciously. You'd better give up. Since the Dark High Priest has been captured despite his strength, it will be very difficult to rescue him. At least, it's impossible with your current strength. The sea god sized up Lin Yu and said with certainty. Although he hasn't been captured for long and it might be easier to rescue him than Tianfeng, the three of us sages still failed when we tried to rescue Tianfeng. I know what you're saying. Lin Yu nodded and continued to ask. Since you think it's impossible, what if I rescue the Dark High Priest? Lin Yu smiled calmly and repeated the question again. This time, the sea god pondered for a while after hearing this question. Of course, he knew what answer Lin Yu wanted to hear. It was none other than Lin Yu rescuing the Dark High Priest. Then, he would take action. But could it really happen? No matter how the sea god thought about it, he felt that it was impossible, even though Lin Yu had the help of the Archaeosaurus. I understand. Finally, the sea goddess replied. If you can rescue the Dark High Priest, I'll help you. However, in the end, the sea god could not help but warn Lin Yu, you have to be careful. Since news of the Dark Priest's capture reached me, the six-winged Divine King must have set a trap. He might be waiting for you to take the bait. Hearing Sea God's words, Lin Yu smiled and said, I'm not stupid, of course I know. Wait for the news, don't regret it when the time comes. Would I lie to you? The sea god snorted, but he still nodded at Lin Yu. At this moment, the barrier gradually dissipated. The sea god withdrew his glory aura. When the Lord of the Realm Sea and the Venerables outside saw their figures, they all became serious, especially Lin Yu. They didn't dare to underestimate him at all. Usually, the sea god would ignore the Lord of the Realm Sea, let alone the sea god's attitude towards them. However, he actually specially talked to Lin Yu today, and even set up a barrier. He must have said something very important. After exchanging glances with Lin Yu and the Archaeosaurus, the sea god turned around and walked into the distorted space that had just appeared behind him. Then, he disappeared without a trace. At the same time, the terrifying aura that had been enveloping the hall also disappeared. Seeing this scene, Lin Yu began to think. Although he had obtained the recognition of the sea god, if he wanted to get the sea god's help, he had to save the Dark Priest first. This was also what he planned to do after hearing the news. In this way, as long as he could save the Dark Priest, Lin Yu would obtain the help of two Venerables. Therefore, this step had to be successful. Lin Yu noticed that Yuja Kitami and Platycodon grandiflorum looked at him with some worry. He smiled at them to indicate that he was fine. Only then did the two of them breathe a sigh of relief. Just now, the sea god said that there was something important and then lowered the barrier to cover Lin Yu, which made the two of them a little worried. Then we'll take our leave first. This time, Lin Yu had already achieved his goal of coming to the Realm Sea. Therefore, he said to the Lord of the Realm Sea and the Venerables, Okay. After the sea god left, the Lord of the Realm Sea was finally able to maintain his previous tone and said calmly. This was the first time he had seen Lin Yu, but not only was Lin Yu not weak, he also had a friendship with the sea god, so he had no choice but to treat him seriously. Venerable Wuya originally planned to catch up with Lin Yu, but when he saw that Lin Yu didn't mention it himself, he roughly understood that Lin Yu probably had other things to do. It was probably related to the news the sea god had told Lin Yu, so he didn't stop Lin Yu. After greeting the others, Lin Yu led everyone out of the hall. Previously, they had come with Venerable Chaos Demon and rode on his warship. This time, Venerable Chaos Demon wasn't there, so everyone flew in the air. Lin Yu also took out a map from his storage ring. This was obtained from the 13th Sea Domain Commander he had killed before. From the map, Lin Yu found that the temple they were in was located in the north of the entire Realm Sea. And in the vicinity there was a passage that could return to the primitive continent. Of course, their destination this time was the Heaven region. But to reach the Heaven region, they had to pass through the primitive continent. There wasn't a long detour. This way, it shouldn't be too far. Lin Yu pointed ahead and said. Lin Yu made the decision. Yuja Kitami and Platycodon grandiflorum naturally didn't have any objections. As for the Archaeosaurus and Goldie, there was no need to mention them. Archaeosaurus was fine with his life after leaving the primogenitor's forbidden grounds. At least he had been to many places before living in the primitive continent. However, Goldie was already completely immersed in the various sceneries and was extremely happy with this kind of life. After Lin Yu and the others left the temple, the Realm Sea Lord asked the Venerable Ones about the situation of the various sea regions before letting everyone leave. After all, the reason why he gathered the Venerable Ones this time was because the 13th Sea Lord had advanced to the Spirit King realm. As long as they passed his test, they could become the new Venerable Ones. However, the 13th Sea Lord was already dead. Nothing major happened recently, so the Realm Sea Lord naturally had nothing to say. He could only end the meeting early. Chapter 1065. Just as the few Venerables left, the Realm Sea Lord suddenly slapped his head and shouted, "Damn! I just realized that the tool to summon the Sea God is gone. How am I supposed to contact the Sea God in the future?" The Realm Sea Lord looked towards the place where the azure water ball was placed. There was only a small pile of powder there. The water ball that could contact the Sea God had already dissipated into powder in the air after Lin Yu absorbed the energy within. Just as the Realm Sea Lord was feeling vexed over this matter, the Sea God had already returned to the depths of the Realm Sea. At this moment, he had returned to his original incomparably huge true body. He was swimming in the sea, bringing with him streams of water. However, his heart was filled with confusion. Should he face the six-winged Divine King together with Lin Yu? He had known Heavenly Phoenix for many years and was already an old friend. If he could save Heavenly Phoenix from the Heaven region, he was naturally willing to go. However, his rationality told him that it was impossible. Previously, when the three of them went to the Heaven region together, they were unable to save Heavenly Phoenix from the six-winged Divine King. So what if there was Lin Yu this time? From the short contact just now, the Sea God had already sensed that after Lin Yu received the energy from his treasure, his strength had broken through to the late stage of the Spirit King realm. Although his realm had increased a lot compared to the first time they met, even so, the strength of the Spirit King realm was still so weak that it could be ignored when facing the six-winged Divine King. Sigh. Let's talk about it when the time comes. If he can really save the Dark Priest. The Sea God let out a long sigh. Because the Dark Priest had just been captured, and his strength was far inferior to Heavenly Phoenix's, other than the possible ambush set up by the six-winged Divine King, the difficulty of saving him would definitely be lower than Heavenly Phoenix's. Therefore, after some consideration, the Sea God still gave the choice to Lin Yu. As long as Lin Yu could save the Dark Priest from the Heaven region and let him see a trace of hope, he would abide by the agreement and join Lin Yu's group to fight against the six-winged Divine King together. On the other hand, he would just peacefully stay in this realm sea and enjoy his final moment. The Sea God knew that once the six-winged Divine King completed his breakthrough, everything would come to an end. The six-winged Divine King would definitely look for the sage realm experts like them. Regardless of whether it was past enmity or other matters, everything would be settled at that time. The Sea God adjusted its direction and dived deeper into the sea. On the other side, Lin Yu and the others returned to the primitive continent through the passage. I'm preparing to head directly to the Heaven realm. Are you following me or? Lin Yu asked everyone. But before he could finish, several people spoke in unison. Of course I'm following you. Lin Yu nodded and looked around. All right then. This place wasn't the passage they used to head to Realm Sea, so their position was also different from before. The surrounding shrubs extended all the way to the horizon. Lin Yu didn't know where they were, but at this time, Yuja Kitami recognized it. This is the northern part of the primitive continent. This area is all like this. Yuja Kitami grew up in the primitive continent. Although she didn't go out often, she understood the situation of the entire primitive continent through some books. Oh? Then is there a passage to the heaven realm nearby? After hearing Yuja Kitami's answer, Lin Yu quickly asked. Yuja Kitami pondered for a moment, then muttered, "There is, but if we directly go through the passage, we will be discovered by the people of the heaven realm." In the entire 3 realms and 5 regions, from top to bottom, they were heaven realm, primitive continent, realm sea, and the 5 regions were distributed on the primitive continent in the middle. What was different from the other forces was that the heaven realm was extremely strict in guarding the border. Anyone who wanted to enter the heaven realm would be checked, and once they found anything unusual, they would immediately be captured. And Lin Yu's identity would undoubtedly attract the attention of those guards. Although the strength of those guards was definitely not enough to deal with Lin Yu's group, as long as they spread the news of Lin Yu's arrival to the 6-winged Divine King, it would be difficult for Lin Yu and the others to move around in the heaven realm. This was also a scene that Lin Yu didn't want to see. Therefore, after Yuja Kitami said this, Lin Yu also nodded. "I know, but I already have a plan." Lin Yu had some understanding of the guards arranged by the heaven realm near the passage. This was because after the sequence battle ended, when Lin Yu went to the Nangong family in the primitive continent to save Nangong Yu, he passed through the passage. However, at that time, perhaps because of the start of the sequence battle, a large number of troops in the heaven realm were transferred back to the sequence battle, so the guards near the passage were not strict. But this time, Lin Yu knew that it would be different from the past, because the 6-winged Divine King might have already set up a trap for him on the way to rescue the Dark Priest, so he would naturally increase his defenses in other places. Hearing that Lin Yu was not unprepared, Yuja Kitami and Platycodon grandiflorum both relaxed. They knew that Lin Yu would not say anything unreliable. Since he said that he already had a plan, then he must have thought of a way to deal with the heaven realm guard. Continue walking towards the north. The passage shouldn't be too far from here. Beimo Yua looked around and made a judgment. All right. Following the direction that Yuja Kitami pointed out, everyone began to move. The surrounding area was surrounded by low shrubs. Although it was unable to hide large demonic beasts, some smaller demonic beasts could perfectly hide within them. As expected, Lin Yu and the others did not walk too far before they were attacked for the first time. Just as Platycodon grandiflorum passed by a bush, the bush trembled, and then a small emerald-green snake darted out. So, the aura of this emerald-green snake was concealed to an extremely weak extent, and its speed was extremely fast. In less than a breath's time, it rushed from the bush to Platycodon grandiflorum's neck. The sharp teeth of the emerald-green snake were already covered with a transparent liquid. This was the venom that was secreted from its teeth. However, Platycodon grandiflorum's reaction was even faster. After all, this snake's strength was only around the 10,000 soul realm, so it was not difficult for her to deal with it, even if she was ambushed. This was also because no one revealed their aura, otherwise, this snake would not dare to show its head. Swish! A sword chi instantly condensed from Platycodon grandiflorum's fingertip, and then intertwined with the small snake that was still in midair. Its outcome was obvious. It was mainly agile and relied on sneak attacks to hunt. Chapter 1066. Platycodon grandiflorum lightly slashed the emerald-green snake with the sword chi in her hand, turning it into dozens of pieces and falling to the ground. It couldn't be any more dead. What happened just now happened in an instant. Beimo Yua sensed the abnormality here and quickly looked over. "Are you all right?" Seeing this, Yuja Kitami quickly asked. Platycodon grandiflorum smiled and shook her head. "Of course. However, there are quite a few strange demonic beasts hidden in the nearby bushes. Because of the sudden situation, Platycodon grandiflorum released her divine sense and deliberately sensed the surrounding bushes. She didn't notice it before, but now that she deliberately sensed it, she realized that there were many monsters hiding in the bushes. In this case, if they continued like before, there might be monsters that didn't know what was good for them and would run out to attack them. Then don't hide your aura for now. Lin Yu smiled and said to Platycodon grandiflorum. After Platycodon grandiflorum heard this, she no longer deliberately hid her aura and completely revealed her Spirit King realm aura. When her aura spread out, everyone immediately sensed that some monsters had appeared in the surrounding bushes and quickly scattered in all directions. Some of the more cowardly monsters didn't even dare to move and could only lie on the ground stiffly. This was not the ancestors' forbidden ground that Lin Yu and the others went to before. There were many Spirit King realm monsters here. To the monsters here, the Spirit King realm was already an existence that could not be challenged. Therefore, when they sensed Platycodon grandiflorum's aura, they acted in this way. This time, when everyone walked in the bushes, not a single monster appeared to attack Lin Yu. Moreover, their speed wasn't slow at all. After a short 2 hours, they arrived at the passageway that Baimao Yur had mentioned. There were also some other people by the side of the passageway. They were people who were preparing to head to the heavenly realm or had just returned from the heavenly realm. However, most of them were merchants, and only a small portion of them were ordinary cultivators. This was because different places in the three realms had various specialties, such as medicinal herbs or ores, and these things could be sold for extremely high prices in certain places. Thus, merchants that traveled between the three realms were born. After everyone put on a simple disguise and hid their cultivation, Lin Yu led everyone towards the heaven region. Under normal circumstances, so long as one's cultivation had attained the Four Symbols realm, one would be able to pass through the passageway alone to arrive at the territory of the other realms. To Lin Yu and the others, it was extremely easy. They also encountered some other people in the passage, but they were all overtaken by Lin Yu and the others. In less than the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the scene of the heaven domain appeared in front of everyone. However, other than Little Yellow, everyone else had been to the heaven domain before, so they were not surprised. Furthermore, when they arrived at the heaven domain, there were some railings around them. These railings were filled with Yao Qi fluctuations, making it impossible to pass through them directly. If he wanted to leave this place, he could only pass through a checkpoint in front of him. From Lin Yu and the others' line of sight, they could see that there were more than 10 people guarding the checkpoint. These people were all wearing the special uniforms of the heaven domain. Each of them had the strength of close to the 10,000 spirit realm, and was only a step away from the 10,000 spirit realm. This kind of strength was extremely rare in the realm C or the primitive continent. It had to be known that once one's strength reached the 10,000 spirit realm, one could become the master of a region in the realm C, and those who were close to the 10,000 spirit realm could be considered the overlord of a region in the realm C, but here they could only be a guard. In front of the checkpoint, there was a line of people. Everyone had to go through the inspection of the guards before they could leave. Other than checking their cultivation, they also checked their identity, which region they came from, and which force they belonged to. Although cultivation and identity could be disguised, and if Lin Yu did it carefully, he could also deceive everyone. However, he had an even simpler method, which was to use perception control to fool these guards. Lin Yu and the others came to the back of the line and began to line up. When the people in front noticed them, they took a few more glances at Yuja Kitami and Platycodon grandiflorum before turning back to discuss. Yuja Kitami and Platycodon grandiflorum weren't surprised by these people's gazes. Although they had undergone a simple disguise to cover up their original appearances, it was difficult to change their temperament and would often attract the attention of others. However, the content of these people's conversation surprised Lin Yu and the others. "Brother Wang, what goods did you bring this time?" It's just some specialties from the realm C. It's not worth mentioning, not worth mentioning. Tisk stingy. Are you afraid that I, your brother, will cut off your path to wealth? However, have you heard about the news released by the realm of heaven recently? Are you talking about the Dark Priest? Of course I know. If a businessman doesn't even know about this, he would be doing it for nothing. I heard that the Dark Priest will be beheaded in the city of Divine Kings in 2 days. Right, I also heard about it. I don't know what that person is thinking, to actually leak information and betray the realm of heaven. Yet after hearing this, Lin Yu knew that not only had the Dark Priest been captured, he was also about to be executed. Lin Yu was very clear that this was definitely the work of the six-winged Divine King. If he really wanted to kill the Dark Priest, he could have just done it directly. There was no need to drag it out for a few days, as if he was giving Lin Yu time to prepare a rescue. However, Lin Yu wasn't sure if the six-winged Divine King would really make a move in 2 days, but it seemed like he had to hurry up and rescue the Dark Priest within 2 days. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, it was the turn of the merchants in front of Lin Yu to be inspected. These few people came to the side of the guards and stood properly. Then, a guard held a round container in his hand and walked around these people. Suddenly, when the guard came to the side of a person, a red light suddenly lit up on the round container. DDD. At the same time, a notification sound appeared on the round container. Seeing this scene, the surrounding guards all came over. I suspect that you have something that doesn't conform to the rules of the realm of heaven. Take it out. The guard who seemed to be the strongest among the captains walked in front of the merchant and said to him. This merchant happened to be one of the people who were discussing in front of Lin Yu and the others. When he saw a group of guards surrounding him, his face turned pale. I don't have that kind of thing on me. The merchant placed his hands by his sides and said with a trembling voice. Chapter 1067. The guard captain frowned when he saw the merchant's reaction. Although the circular detection device had sounded an alarm, it had also made a mistake in judgment. Moreover, the person in front of him didn't seem to be faking it. In the past, the guards wouldn't pursue the matter too much when they encountered such a situation. However, the situation now was different. When the guard captain saw that the merchant didn't take out the item that caused the alarm, he nodded to the guards at the side. 2 guards walked out and released their glory chi to suppress the merchant. The merchant's strength was only at the 4 symbols realm, so he had no chance to resist at all. When the merchant's companions saw this scene, they hurriedly wanted to plead with the guards. Some of them even took out storage rings that were filled with glory bot. They knew that in the past, they would be fine as long as they paid a small price in such a situation. However, they didn't expect the guard captain to not even look at the storage rings in their hands and said sternly, "During special times, all abnormalities have to be locked up." Hearing this, everyone was stunned, but they immediately realized that he was referring to the matter of the Dark Priest. Seeing this situation, everyone fell silent. On the other hand, the merchant was escorted away by 2 guards with a helpless look on his face. He had indeed brought a type of goods that were not allowed in the Qingyun region, but in the past, he just had to pay some money. Today's situation had never happened. However, he was still unwilling to hand over all the goods. After all, the price of these goods wasn't low. I can only be locked up first and see what happens later. The merchant thought to himself. At this moment, it was Lin Yu and the others' turn. Seeing their appearance, the guard captain frowned. A man, 2 women, and 2 strange-looking beasts. First of all, even without checking, the guard captain knew that these people definitely didn't pass. This was because apart from a few types of beasts, no other beasts were allowed to enter the Qingyun region. Archaeosaurus and Goldie obviously didn't belong to one of those types. You guys. Just as the guard captain was about to speak, he suddenly saw Lin Yu smile faintly at him. In the eyes of Lin Yu and the others, the group of guards suddenly froze, and then their eyes became hollow. Not only that, even the people in the queue behind him fell into Lin Yu's fantasy. "Let's go," Lin Yu said calmly. Then, he led everyone out of the checkpoint. Lin Yu wasn't worried about the possibility of being exposed, because under his perceptual manipulation, whether it was the guards or other people in the checkpoint, they were all deceived by the illusions he created. When Lin Yu and the others left, everyone in the checkpoint was still trapped in the illusion, and the atmosphere was strangely silent. Just as the new batch of people walked out of the passage, the eyes of everyone in the checkpoint instantly recovered. Lin Yu and the others were no longer in front of the guard captain, but he wasn't surprised at all, because in his mind, Lin Yu and the others had already passed their inspection. As for the two beasts, they also had passes that allowed them to pass. This was because under Lin Yu's perceptual manipulation, the people who were being controlled took the initiative to fill in the loopholes according to Lin Yu's wishes. For example, Lin Yu didn't even know that the beasts could use the passes to pass through the checkpoint. He only subconsciously hinted at it in the guard captain's mind, and the guard captain would take the initiative to look for evidence in this direction. Even without the passes, he would still think of other ways to let Lin Yu and the others pass through the checkpoint reasonably. This was the power of perceptual manipulation. Outside the checkpoint, Lin Yu also saw the outline of a town not far away. However, this was only a small town at the edge of the Qingyun region, and it wasn't the place where the Dark Priest was imprisoned. The place where the Dark Priest was imprisoned was called the City of the Divine King, and it was located at the center of the Qingyun region. At the same time, it was also the largest town in the Qingyun region. If they wanted to reach the City of the Divine King, they would still have a long way to go. Lin Yu knew that the first thing they needed to do now was to figure out their location, and then advance towards the City of the Divine King. And to solve this problem, going to the town not far away was a good choice. Lin Yu told everyone his plan, and seeing that they didn't have any other opinions, he led them towards the town. As Lin Yu and the others hurried, they also met the group of merchants at the checkpoint. Perhaps because some of their companions were detained by the guards of the Qingyun region, the atmosphere in the group was a little gloomy. However, when they noticed Lin Yu and the others, they all revealed a look of shock. This was because they saw Archaeosaurus and Goldie behind Lin Yu and the others. These two demon beasts actually passed the checkpoint's inspection? When they were queuing up, some merchants also saw Archaeosaurus and Goldie, but according to their knowledge, these demon beasts weren't allowed to be brought into the Qingyun region. If it was in the past, they might be able to get away with paying a large sum of money. However, from the guard captain's performance, they could tell that this was a special period, and even if they had money, they couldn't break the rules. Therefore, when they saw Archaeosaurus and Goldie, they were so shocked. What species are these two demon beasts? I've never seen them before. No matter what species they are, they definitely aren't within the rules. Why can they be brought into the Qingyun region, and why is Brother Wang detained? Shoo! Don't you know that there are things like passes? I see. The merchants looked at the figures of Lin Yu's group and discussed in low voices. Hearing these people's words, Lin Yu smiled faintly. He was wondering if he should let Archaeosaurus and Goldie change into other forms, but now it seemed that there was no need. The people of the Qingyun region would imagine it themselves when they saw it. Everyone continued to rush in the direction of the town. During this process, they could clearly feel that the closer they got to the town, the more people there were on the side of the road. When Lin Yu and the others arrived at the city gate, it was already an incense stick's time later. This town was surrounded by high walls that were dozens of feet high, and the city gate was more than 10 feet wide. Among the people coming and going, they could occasionally see people whose cultivation had reached the 10,000 spirit realm. This scene was very rare in the other two realms. Needless to say, in the entire primitive continent or the realm C, even in the regions of the four great families and the various venerables in the realm C, it wasn't so easy to see 10,000 spirit realm cultivators. Chapter 1068. Because those with the cultivation of 10,000 spirit realm were already considered the backbone. Moreover, this was only a small city at the edge of the heaven domain. From this, it was enough to see how strong the heaven domain was. Lin Yu and the rest didn't encounter any obstruction at the city gate, because the guards here were only maintaining order and didn't check anything like the checkpoint. When Lin Yu and the rest walked into the city, what entered their eyes were streets that stretched very far. On both sides of the street, there were vendors who were shouting and hawking all kinds of goods. It looked very lively. "Let's split up," Beima Yu suggested when she saw the scene before her. It was the first time everyone came to this city, so they naturally didn't know the distribution of the city. Their goal was to head to the city of divine kings, and the best way was to buy a map. Couldn't just record the surrounding terrain of this city, it had to include the entire heaven domain. Of course, there were other methods, such as finding the caravan in this city that was preparing to head to the city of divine kings and following them. But in this way, the risk of being exposed would greatly increase. Lin Yu naturally understood the logic and nodded after hearing Yuji Kitami's suggestion. "Okay, then regardless of whether you find it or not, gather here in 2 hours. Understood. Okay." Although there were a total of 5 of them, Archiasaros and Goldie couldn't act alone. After all, if they followed Lin Yu and the rest, no one would come forward to interrogate them. But if a demonic beast walked alone, it would definitely attract the attention of others. It would be troublesome if people from the city lord's side were attracted. Therefore, everyone was divided into 3 groups: Lin Yu, Yuji Kitami and Goldie, Platycodon grandiflorum and Archiasaros. They started to look for shops that could buy maps from 3 directions. Buying demonic beast materials, as long as they are above the 4 symbols realm, the price is guaranteed to satisfy you. Blacksmith shop for 100 years, can forge any shape of weapon, welcome to the shop. Selling the specialty of the realm C, grouper spirit pattern fish. After eating it, it can strengthen the physique and has many benefits. Lin Yu walked along a path, and the sound of hawking could be heard from both sides. However, most of them were shops that sold weapons, food, or Yao beast corpses. There were also a few scattered shops that sold medicinal pills. However, Lin Yu looked around and saw that the highest quality medicinal pills were only grade 6 medicinal pills. Moreover, the quality of these medicinal pills looked very ordinary. Sure enough, even in a place like the Heaven Realm, alchemists were extremely rare. In this aspect, it wasn't much different from Realm C and Primitive Continent. Lin Yu arrived in front of a shop that sold weapons. There was a girl in uniform standing at the door. When she saw Lin Yu, she quickly greeted him. "Young master, please come in. What would you like to buy?" Lin Yu waved his hand and said with a smile, "I'm just here to inquire. Do you know where I can buy maps?" When the girl heard this, she was stunned at first. Then, she felt a little disappointed, but she still said after thinking for a moment, "There aren't many shops that sell maps in the city. But, if you keep walking along this street, you'll see one in less than half an hour." "Thank you." Lin Yu nodded and turned around to leave. Just when the girl was about to go back and continue standing, she saw Lin Yu throw a ray of light towards her. The girl quickly caught it with her hand and discovered that it was actually a small ball of dazzling bot. Moreover, the amount was already comparable to her monthly salary. A look of pleasant surprise flashed across the girl's face. She quickly wanted to find Lin Yu and thank him. But when she raised her head, she discovered that Lin Yu's figure was no longer there. On the other side, Lin Yu walked along this road. After half an hour, a classical building appeared in Lin Yu's line of sight. The plaque hanging above had the words, "Treasure Map Pavilion," engraved on it. It's here. Lin Yu raised his eyebrows. This shop was very unique. He could tell what it was selling at a glance. When Lin Yu arrived at the door of the shop, a shop assistant immediately came out from inside with a smile on his face. "Customer, please come in." Under the guidance of the shop assistant, Lin Yu walked into the treasure map pavilion. As soon as he entered, he saw drawings hanging all over the wall. However, these drawings were covered with a layer of hazy light film. He couldn't directly see the drawings inside. Seeing Lin Yu's expression, the shop assistant quickly explained. "Customer, this is a spell cast in our shop. It can hide the contents of the drawings because some drawings, such as weapon forging and treasure maps, can't be displayed before they are sold." "I understand." Lin Yu nodded with a smile and asked. "But what I want to buy is a map." Hearing Lin Yu's words, the shop assistant was startled. After all, maps were not considered consumables. There were very few people who bought maps now. "Customer, the map is here." However, the shop assistant quickly came back to his senses and led Lin Yu to a shelf. At this time, other than Lin Yu, there were also some people in the treasure map pavilion who were accompanied by other shop assistants. However, they were all looking at maps of other categories. On the shelf in front of Lin Yu, there were all kinds of maps arranged from small to large. However, Lin Yu was not familiar with these places. He directly asked the shop assistant, "Is there a map of the entire Qingyun realm?" "Yes, there is, but the price," the shop assistant said slowly because he knew that with the price of the map, ordinary people couldn't afford it. "Let me take a look." Lin Yu waved his hand and motioned for him to take out the map first. The shop assistant rummaged through the shelf, took out a long scroll, and laid it on the table next to him. "Customer, this is what you want. It's a map of the entire Qingyun realm," the shop assistant explained to Lin Yu at the side at the same time. Because the area required to draw the map is extremely huge, the difficulty of drawing the map would increase exponentially with every increase in the size of the map. Therefore, the price of this map is. Lin Yu leaned close to the table and observed the map. He could clearly see that there was a mark in the center of the map. On it was the words City of the Divine Kings. As for the place where Lin Yu and the others were at right now, when they entered the town earlier on, Lin Yu had already seen it from the top of the city gate. It was called Dongling City. As for the location of Dongling City, Lin Yu had already found it on the map. With this map, Lin Yu and the others could easily head to the City of the Divine Kings. They could also avoid some troublesome places based on the information on the map. Chapter 1069. The map was drawn with the skin of a high-level demonic beast, and it had an ancient charm. "If you're satisfied, we'll give you 50,000 Yao baht," the shop assistant said politely. Lin Yu glanced at it briefly. After confirming that there was no mistake, he took out a storage bag and placed it in the shop assistant's hand. The shop assistant took it eagerly. After seeing the amount of Yao baht inside, his expression suddenly changed and he was extremely shocked. When the storage bag was opened, the Yao Qi turned into a ray of light that illuminated the entire room. This attracted everyone's attention. A skinny man winked at his companion and inadvertently sized up Lin Yu. "Sir, you don't need so much Yao baht." The huge amount shocked the shop assistant. The commotion attracted the owner of the shop to come down personally. What surprised everyone was that the owner of the shop was actually a woman. She had a graceful figure and covered her face with a thin veil, which made her look very attractive. Lin Yu didn't seem surprised. "Sir, you must be a distinguished guest since you're so generous. Please come to the attic for tea." Her voice was beautiful and charming. This caused the blood of everyone present to surge. Lin Yu put away the map and nodded slightly. They all knew that the origin of the owner of the treasure diagram pavilion was extremely mysterious, and he was usually elusive. Many people had only heard of her name but had never seen her before. They didn't expect her to be such a young woman. Lin Yu followed the woman upstairs. The curtains were hanging on the ground and danced with the breeze. The entire second floor was filled with a delicate fragrance. Not bad. Lin Yu looked at the decorations and sat down casually at the table. At this moment, the woman brewed tea and brought it to Lin Yu. The woman was secretly surprised. The man in front of her seemed to be different from all the men she had seen before. His eyes were too deep, and his body always exuded an indifferent temperament, which made people want to guess. "Sir, you must be here for something." After the woman served the tea, she sat opposite Lin Yu. "It's much easier to deal with smart people." Lin Yu smiled faintly. After Lin Yu entered the treasure map pavilion, he sensed the aura of the dark divine priest on the second floor. Although it was very weak, it still couldn't escape Lin Yu's detection. Now that he had seen it with his own eyes, he could roughly guess what was going on. The dark divine official had been suppressed, and there must have been people from his faction who had escaped. This person might have been one of them. Perhaps he could learn more about the dark divine priest from this person. "In that case, is there anything I can help you with?" The woman's beautiful eyes fluttered as she speculated in her heart. She had a secret technique passed down by the dark divine priest that could read people's minds. However, facing Lin Yu, all he could see was a dense fog. "It's about the dark priest." Lin Yu took a sip of tea and looked at the woman. Upon hearing the name of the dark priest, the woman's expression changed drastically. She immediately released her Yao Qi and locked onto Lin Yu. The entire street where the treasure map pavilion was located was shaking. The bustling crowd staggered as they looked in all directions in fright. "What's going on? There's a powerful cultivator. Are they going to fight?" There were many cultivators here, and at that moment, they all sensed a powerful cultivation base. The woman's eyes were cold. The entire second floor was shrouded in black fog. She locked onto Lin Yu with a strong murderous intent. "Who are you? Who sent you here?" the woman questioned coldly. She was ready to attack at any time. "Is it the Divine King's faction? I'm afraid no one in this world has the right to order me around." Lin Yu smiled faintly. As he put down the teacup, Yao Qi rippled on the table. In an instant the woman's technique receded like the tide. The woman felt weak. Her beautiful eyes were wide open, and her face was filled with disbelief. Even with her cultivation, she was unable to put up a fight against the man in front of her. Despair filled her heart. "Let's do it." She didn't expect that the dark divine official had placed her in this hidden corner as a pawn that could be used in the future. She didn't expect to be discovered. "Don't worry. I'm not here to kill you," Lin Yu said. "I'm here to save the dark divine official, so I need to know something." Lin Yu didn't reveal his identity. The woman was in disbelief at first, but she quickly reacted. If the man in front of her was really sent by the Divine King and possessed such terrifying strength, he would have captured her long ago. After all, the dark divine official was imprisoned and would be sent to the execution ground in a few days. Someone sent by the Divine King didn't have to go through so much trouble on an inconspicuous person like her. The woman looked at Lin Yu and sighed. "I've been lurking in the dark all this time. I only know that the dark divine official is imprisoned in the deepest part of the prison in the city of divine kings. I only know a little." Helplessness and despair filled the woman's eyes when she heard that the dark divine official was about to be executed. The city of divine kings was personally overseen by the divine king. Rescuing the dark divine official was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for the survivors. However, I don't know who the dark divine official is secretly helping. The woman was very smart. She also guessed that the execution of the dark divine official was likely a trap set by the divine king to lure that person out. She wouldn't reveal anything before she was sure of Lin Yu's identity. Lin Yu understood. It was enough that he knew the dark divine official's situation and that he was relatively safe. However, He didn't have much time left. Even though he knew that it was a trap set by the Divine King, he had to go. The dark divine official had helped him many times. Lin Yu remembered this favor and couldn't stand by and do nothing. After asking, Lin Yu got up. You can continue to stay here. Don't worry, the dark divine official won't die. With that, Lin Yu went downstairs, leaving the woman standing there in a daze for a long time. When he walked out of the treasure map pavilion, it was almost time to meet up. When he arrived at the meeting place, he saw that the Archaeosaurus and the others were already waiting there. Did you bring the map? Yuja Kitami asked. Lin Yu nodded slightly. The reward this time is greater than expected. When Lin Yu was in the treasure map pavilion, he had noticed that there was something special about the map of the Qianyu region in his hands. On one hand, he had paid so much to lure out the owner of the treasure map pavilion. On the other hand, the value of the map was greater than the map of the Qianyu region. Is that so? Just as Yuja Kitami was rejoicing, Platycodon grandiflorum frowned. We are being watched. Just a few annoying flies. Lin Yu didn't think much of it. In the crowd, the skinny man and his companions hid themselves and were sizing up Lin Yu and the others. Inform the brothers that there is a big ticket today, the skinny man ordered. At the same time, his eyes were filled with greed as he looked at Yuja Kitami and Platycodon grandiflorum. I didn't expect this fool to have two beauties by his side. Won't they serve me well tonight? The man's eyes were filled with lust. It seemed that it was already the night after the deed was done. Chapter 1070. Platycodon grandiflorum revealed a disgusted expression. Her cultivation was high, so she could clearly sense the man's lecherous gaze in the crowd. Lin Yu did not look at the man and just said casually, "They don't need to live in this world anymore." One sentence to determine a person's life and death. Platycodon grandiflorum looked at Lin Yu, her eyes revealing a strange light. Lin Yu's words were clearly to protect her and Yuja Kitami. The few of them left the city and deliberately came to a remote wilderness. At this time, there were already 7 people following them in the dark. Until Lin Yu and the others stopped. The 7 people in hiding felt that the time was right and slowly walked out. The thin man smiled. "Little brother, where are you going?" "I'll wait for you here," Lin Yu said indifferently. A corner of a formation pattern appeared under the feet of the 7 people, quickly spreading and connecting together, sealing off the area. When we were in the treasure map pavilion, I saw that little brother was generous. Why don't you lend us some glorybot? The thin man stepped forward with a smile on his face. In his view, the aura of Lin Yu and the others was weak. The 7 of them were now at the half-step Spirit King realm. However, they did not expect to see Lin Yu and the others in Dongling City for a short time, and greed arose in their hearts. The 7 of them were proud, but they did not know that they were getting closer and closer to death. The few of them had already surrounded Lin Yu and the others, and the formation was activated, turning into a light screen, completely sealing off the area. 2 beauties, do you want him to die? The thin man had a lecherous smile, completely treating Lin Yu and the others as fish on the chopping board, as if they could be slaughtered at any time. Serve us brothers well tonight, maybe we can consider letting you go. The thin man did not finish his words. In the sky, Azura's shadow descended, his huge body like a majestic mountain. The skinny man was pinched between 2 of Azura's fingers. He exerted a little force, and with a scream, the man exploded into a bloody mist that floated in the air. "You're dirtying my ears," Lin Yu said calmly, standing where he was. The remaining 6 were dumbfounded by the sudden turn of events. The man in front of them clearly did not exude a strong aura, but the method he used was too terrifying. With a raise of his hand, he killed his companions without even being able to resist. It was a one-sided massacre. "Quick, release the formation!" Someone was terrified. Only now did they realize that they had kicked an iron plate. But it was all too late. Azura's illusory figure was emotionless. He raised his hand and grabbed another person. Then, he clenched his fist, causing blood to splatter everywhere. There was no more movement. Run! Facing Azura's shadow, they had already lost the will to resist. Right now, there was only one thought in his mind, and that was to run as far as he could. But how could Lin Yu let them go? Now that he was in the Qingyun realm, he would not leave any traces behind to avoid being exposed. The smiles on their faces had already turned into fear. When they released the formation, they found that there was another light curtain here, and their bodies hit it, causing ripples. The force of the impact immediately made them spit out blood. At this time, another one was killed by Azura's shadow. Some timid ones had already knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly. Lord, please spare my life. I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I have offended you, please let me go. Seeing that person kneeling on the ground with a respectful attitude, he did not dare to think of anything else. Now, he only hoped that Lin Yu would let him go. Seeing that some of his companions were kneeling on the ground, it seemed that the shadow had also stopped. The other two followed suit and knelt on the ground, kowtowing again and again. What are you doing? The remaining person, with disheveled hair, questioned sternly. But before he could walk a few feet, he was crushed into meat paste by a palm that covered the sky. Didn't you want to borrow glory bait from me? Lin Yu asked indifferently. The three of them trembled. Lord, you are a magnanimous person. We dare not. Seeing that Lin Yu did not seem to have any killing intent, the three of them secretly heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, they were secretly happy. This kind of person comes from a big force and is incomparably arrogant. As long as I flatter him, my life today will be saved. Lin Yu said to Yuja Kitami and the others. Let's go. The three of them did not dare to raise their heads. Feeling that Lin Yu and the others were preparing to leave, they could not help but smile. But in the next moment, this smile stopped forever. Azura's shadow waved its arm, and the three of them disappeared into thin air, their souls extinguished. Under the effect of devouring the starry sky, their cultivation was absorbed by Lin Yu. Lin Yu and the others left this place and prepared to use the nearest teleportation array to head to the city of Divine Kings. In the meantime, Lin Yu took out the map that he had bought at the treasure map pavilion. Although this map was drawn with the skin of a high-level demonic beast, it was yellowed due to the passage of time. But the terrain on it was still clear. However, Lin Yu did not look at it carefully. Instead, he rubbed the map between two fingers. Small amounts of glory chi were attached to it. Like a sharp knife, it cut a corner of the beast's skin. There was a mezzanine in this map. This caused Beimo Yu and the others to be very surprised. In this mezzanine, there was a map. Taking a closer look, it depicted the detailed layout of the city of Divine Kings. The specific location of each place was marked. It was extremely detailed. Platycodon grandiflorum took the map and looked at it for a long time. With this map of the city of Divine Kings, it's much more convenient. Yuja Kitami also stepped forward and asked curiously, How did you find out that there is a mezzanine in this map? In response, Lin Yu only smiled and did not say anything. This map had a long history. Someone had deliberately set up a method to prevent others from looking into it. Lin Yu's consciousness was extremely strong. It had already reached the level of perfection. When he came in contact with the map, he already had a simple feeling. After buying the map and looking into it, he was even more certain. The city of Divine Kings had a high status in the heaven region. It was heavily guarded. Many of the secret places on the map were unknown to the outside world. This map must have been left behind by the craftsmen who built the city of Divine Kings. It was just that for some reason it was revealed. Later on, it was placed in the map of the heaven region and was obtained by Lin Yu. He had gained a lot from the trip to Dongling City. Not only did he understand the current situation of the Dark Priest, but he also obtained a detailed map of the city of divine kings. This would be a great help for his future plans. Yuja Kitami was in a good mood. She hugged Lin Yu's arm and swayed forward. However, the city of divine kings was still an insurmountable mountain in everyone's heart. After a few hours of traveling, Lin Yu and the group followed the map and arrived at the nearest city. There was a teleportation formation in the city. After taking a few turns, they would arrive at the city of divine kings. Outside the city gates, there were soldiers in metal armor. They were checking the passers-by who were entering and exiting the city carefully. The great priest would be beheaded 2 days later. The city of divine kings had already given the order to be on guard. They were waiting for Lin Yu. Right now, these slightly bigger cities were heavily guarded. This was especially the case for the cities with teleportation formations. They were heavily guarded by the forces of the divine kings. Chapter 1071. Now that Lin Yu had broken through to the late stage of the Spirit King realm, his strength was at the top of the 3 realms and 5 regions. After paying the glory bot, they stepped onto the teleportation array. Following a strong spatial fluctuation, the group disappeared. In the city of divine kings, the 6-winged divine king sat in a majestic palace. His face was indifferent, without any emotion. His body was surrounded by terrifying glory chi, like an eternal furnace that burned constantly. The 6-winged divine king was like the only god in the world. No one in the 3 realms and 5 regions could compare to him. 2 more days. My brother, you should have reached the heavenly region. The 6-winged divine king shattered Lin Yu's shadow with his fingertip as he spoke in a deep voice. Lin Yu, who was getting closer to the city of divine kings after passing through several teleportation arrays, seemed to have sensed something. He looked at the center of the world, as if he was looking at the 6-winged divine king from afar. Lin Yu didn't say anything. He didn't have much time left. The Dark High Priest would be executed in 2 days. No matter what, he had to save the Dark High Priest. After spending a day, they finally arrived at the city of divine kings. There were many people here. A huge warship floated in the void and slowly entered the city of divine kings. Lin Yu and the others walked out of the huge teleportation array. Their appearances and auras were concealed, and they were reduced to ordinary people. Countless experts had gathered here. At the same time, there was a heavy and oppressive atmosphere. It was related to the Dark High Priest's execution. Many cultivators who came and went were whispering and chatting in low voices. After all, the Dark High Priest was in the Saint Realm. It was extremely difficult for one to be born since ancient times. But now, he was going to be executed in the city of divine kings. This was undoubtedly a huge storm in the 3 realms and 5 regions. The impact would be huge, and it might indirectly affect the situation of the entire world. Of course, the 6-winged divine king was now at the peak of his power. It would be difficult to find someone in the 3 realms and 5 regions who could shake him. It's said that there was something fishy about the 6-winged divine king's ascension back then. This chaos has lasted until now. The Dark High Priest's suppression is also related to that matter. Someone walked on the street and discussed with the people beside him. Shoo! Don't say anything, don't say anything. The people at the side hurriedly stopped him and looked around vigilantly. Regarding this matter, the people and factions in the Heaven Domain who knew about it all felt that it was a taboo. As for the factions that offended the 6-winged divine king, they had long since been reduced to the dust of history. Lin Yu looked at the center of the city of divine kings. The divine king palace stood under the sky, majestic and resplendent. The vague impression in his mind was that he had once lived a carefree life here. In just 100,000 years the world had changed. The city of divine kings was no longer the city he remembered from his previous life. Currently, the person living inside was his greatest enemy, the instigator of all his schemes, his elder brother, the enemy who had killed his father, the six-winged divine king. In fact, they could clearly sense the cultivation of the peak of the sage realm even from the periphery. The two words divine king represented everything. He was the supreme ruler of the 3 realms and 5 regions. 100,000 years had passed, and it had been deeply engraved in the minds of all living beings. They did not even have the thought of blaspheming or rebelling against him. 100,000 years. It's time to change. Lin Yu muttered to himself. The few of them found an inn. The sky was dark. In front of the Divine King Palace, on the altar, the sound of chains was cold and piercing. The dark priest's limbs were bound. His hair was disheveled, and his shoulder blades were pierced. His breathing was very weak. There was not the slightest change of expression in his black eyes. "Old Divine King, I hope that Lin Yu will not come," he muttered. The six-winged Divine King had already set up layers of ambushes here. As long as Lin Yu appeared, he would definitely die. The Dark Priest did not wish for the old Divine King's 100,000 years of planning to be destroyed in a single day. Outside a few rooms, Lin Yu was expressionless. "I will be in seclusion tonight. Do not disturb me." It was the first time that Yuji Kitami and the others had seen Lin Yu with such an expression. However, they quickly understood. After all, they were facing the six-winged Divine King who had ruled the celestial region for 100,000 years. Perhaps if they were in his shoes, they would have already given up hope. Now, it was clear that Lin Yu still had a way. In the room, Xiaobai, come out. Bai Xiaoli's phantom image appeared in front of Lin Yu. Her expression was languid and tired. Clearly, she had not recovered. Lin Yu's expression was calm. "I will have to rely on your strength tomorrow. You need me again. I was severely injured by the six-winged Divine King and have not recovered yet." Bai Xiaoli's expression was serious. Her current strength was less than 100%. If she really encountered the six-winged Divine King, she would not even be able to survive a single blow. Lin Yu already had a plan in mind. He unfolded the map of the City of Divine Kings that he had obtained from Dongling City. He pointed to the east side of the Divine King's palace. There was a phantom image of a black bird carved on it. Clearly, the number 1 on the demon god list, Heavenly Phoenix, was imprisoned there. "You mean?" Bai Xiaoli came to the table and looked at the map. She fell into deep thought. Lin Yu nodded. "That's right. The City of Divine Kings is huge. The location where Heavenly Phoenix is imprisoned is very far from the altar where the Dark Priest will be sentenced. And that place is guarded by the power of the six-winged Divine King. With my current strength, I will not be able to save Heavenly Phoenix." Before Lin Yu came to the sky region, he already had a plan in mind. Otherwise, he would not have boasted in front of the sea god dragon. He needed to borrow Bai Xiaoli's strength to create a diversion. At the same time, he would cause chaos in the City of Divine Kings. Only then would he have the confidence to save the Dark Priest. Lin Yu's eyes turned cold. He had to make a choice. "When the time comes, you will go with the Archaeosaurus to the location where Heavenly Phoenix is imprisoned. If the six-winged Divine King insists on taking my life, you and the Archaeosaurus will try your best to save Heavenly Phoenix." Bai Xiaoli's expression turned serious as well. "Is this okay?" Lin Yu had already considered the various possibilities. "There is only a 10% chance. I believe that the six-winged Divine King will definitely choose to suppress Heavenly Phoenix. After all, the number 1 on the demon god list is not something he will let go easily. Then what if you die? Won't everything be in vain?" Bai Xiaoli frowned slightly. Although she admired Lin Yu's plan, there was a fatal problem. That 10% chance. Lin Yu shook his head and said with certainty, "I won't die." He had the ability to turn back time. However, this was a last resort. The six-winged Divine King was too powerful. Lin Yu could only gamble on that 10% chance. If he failed, all his efforts would be for naught. After all, the place where Heavenly Phoenix was imprisoned would be even more difficult to defend. Now that the Archaeosaurus and Baishiali were injured, it was impossible for them to fight the six-winged Divine King. This is a dangerous trip. If we fail, I will have to trouble you to bring Yuja Kitami and the rest out of the city of Divine Kings. Lin Yu's tone was unusually gentle. Baishiali's expression also turned serious. Saving the Dark Priest this time was not child's play. Lin Yu did not plan to bring Yuja Kitami and the rest with him. After all, Lin Yu was facing an existence like the six-winged Divine King. With their cultivation at the Psionic King realm, it would be difficult for them to be of any use. Chapter 1072. As time passed, the sun rose from the horizon. The sound of a bell reverberated through the heavens and the earth. The cultivators of the Qinyu domain had gathered around the altar. Today was the day of the Dark Priest's execution. The news swept through the Qinyu domain like a storm. No one had expected the Dark Divine official to be a Saint Realm expert. In the minds of many people, this level of existence only existed in legends. Today, they were about to witness the fall of a saint. The atmosphere was tense. The cultivators below all had different expressions. After all, many of them had received favors from the Dark Priest. Now that he was in such a state, they couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't even show it. As the glorious Qi transformed into a divine cloud, a majestic figure appeared in the sky amidst the intertwining Sage Realm aura. Long live the Divine King! Long live the Divine King! Below, all the disciples of the Qinyu domain knelt down in reverence. The six-winged Divine King's face was cold. His voice was like heavenly might, reverberating in everyone's ears. The Dark Priest has committed a crime. Today, I am here to execute him. Those who have committed a crime should be ground to dust to protect the dignity of the Qinyu domain. Everyone below shouted in unison. The Dark Priest, whose cultivation had been sealed, was forced to kneel on the ground by two half-step Spirit King realm cultivators. The Dark Priest was very weak. He looked at the six-winged Divine King in the sky and sneered. "Do you deserve the title of Divine King? How dare you?" The Divine Light Priest, who stood respectfully behind the six-winged Divine King, shouted coldly. His terrifying aura made the Dark Priest, who had no cultivation at all, stumble. The wounds all over the Dark Priest's body were cracking. His body was damaged, especially at the place where his shoulder blade had been pierced. Hideous black blood was dripping down. Lin Yu, who was hiding in the crowd, looked at the Dark Priest being treated coldly. However, he didn't show any killing intent. The Dark Priest didn't seem to feel anything. He looked up and said slowly, "Let me see if you can achieve your goal after 100,000 years of planning." The six-winged God King did not answer that. The senses of his soul had already enveloped the entire city. Even the slightest movement would be unable to escape his detection. When the sun rose completely, there was no warmth in the entire city of Divine Kings. It was replaced by bone-chilling coldness, as if they were in an ice cellar of the underworld. The atmosphere was extremely stifling. Everyone felt a sense of suffocation. Do you really think that Lin Yu is still the same person he was back then? The Dark Priest was not surprised by this outcome. On the contrary, he was very pleased. He was someone who should have died long ago. It was only because of the old Divine King that he was able to struggle at death's door until now. Now that he had witnessed Lin Yu's growth, it was enough. He laughed heartily. The six-winged God King stood in the sky with a frown on his cold face. The Divine Priest of Light also reported in a low voice, "We haven't found any trace of Lin Yu. Did he really give up on the Divine Priest of Darkness?" While they were talking, noon had arrived. "The Dark Priest is about to come to an end." Someone sighed. A divine sword appeared in the Divine Priest of Light's hand, intertwining with terrifying power. The moment it appeared, the temperature of the entire world dropped another degree. An artifact of this level could definitely cause harm to a saint expert. A large cauldron appeared, and a dark brown substance flowed within it. It seemed to be able to corrode even Yao Qi. 9 underworld turbid water. Someone recognized this substance. He's going to destroy the Dark Priest of Darkness. The 9 underworld turbid water had a mysterious origin. There was nothing in the world that could not be corroded. Even the body of an immortal saint expert would turn into rotten bones and withered flesh if it entered it. Old friend, although you're surprising, it's time to end everything. The divine priest of light held his divine sword and descended on the altar. He was very surprised by the dark priest's strength. But now, no matter how powerful you are, you can't turn the situation around. The divine priest of light caressed the divine sword in his hand. Don't worry. After I behead you, I'll immediately throw you into the 9 underworld turbid water. Although it'll be painful, you'll soon feel numb. The life force of a saint expert was so strong that it was difficult to bury them. It wasn't easy to kill them completely by beheading them. However, it was precisely because of this that the crowd felt their blood run cold and their hair stand on end upon witnessing this scene. Just imagining the pain was enough to make one shudder. The dark priest was very calm. His brows were slightly closed under his loose hair. My only regret is that I won't be able to see Lin Yu kill you with my own eyes. He was talking to the 6-winged divine king. He didn't fear death at all. It's a pity that scene will never happen, the 6-winged divine king said faintly. Lin Yu stood below the altar, Yao Qi circulating in his body. His late-stage, spiritual king cultivation was ready to erupt at any time. Boom! Suddenly, the entire city of divine kings shook. A large hole seemed to have been torn open in the sky. The figures of the Archaeosaurus and the 9-tailed celestial fox stood in the east of the city of divine kings. Their terrifying auras turned into a storm of Yao Qi that swept out. The buildings in the east of the city of divine kings exploded inch by inch under the auras of the 2 monsters. They were reduced to dust and even drifted to the altar. 15 minutes passed. Report. 2 powerful monsters suddenly invaded the place where the celestial phoenix was imprisoned. A disciple of the celestial domain, covered in wounds, stumbled to the altar of the divine king palace. The Archaeosaurus and the 9-tailed celestial fox that helped Lin Yu escape. Dazzling light burst from the 6-winged divine king's eyes. Like 2 immortal swords, they pierced through the air and looked into the distance. It seems that Lin Yu is here. The divine priest of light stopped moving his sword and also looked into the distance. Divine king, what should we do? The divine priest of light frowned deeply with worry. Lin Yu's goal doesn't seem to be to save the dark priest, but the celestial phoenix. However, the 6-winged divine king wasn't anxious. He still had some tricks up his sleeve at the place where the celestial phoenix was imprisoned. He was confident that he wouldn't be able to break through it in a short time. Continue the execution. The 6-winged divine king put his hands behind his back and spoke calmly. He guessed that Lin Yu's goal was to save the dark priest as a diversion. Yes, divine king. The divine priest of light bowed and took out his sword again. He walked toward the dark priest, who was being escorted by 2 half-step spirit kings. The divine priest of light looked at the dark priest, who kept his head down and didn't forget to mock him. It's a pity that you won't be able to see the divine king personally kill Lin Yu. This is a good plan. The dark priest didn't seem to hear the divine priest of light's words. Exchanging my life for the celestial phoenix is not a loss at all. When the celestial phoenix escapes, the Archaeosaurus, the sea god dragon. Even with your strength, the 6-winged divine king can only be executed. The dark priest laughed. Chapter 1073. The dark divine priest's laughter resounded throughout the altar. The six-winged Divine King's expression turned ugly. He was very confident that Lin Yu's goal was to save the Dark Divine Priest. However, it was extremely difficult to kill a saint expert. Even with an item like the 9 nether turbid water, the Divine Priest of Light estimated that it would take 49 days to kill him. Lin Yu naturally understood this. However, the Dark Divine Priest would have to suffer a little. Puff, the Dark Priest, whose cultivation had been sealed, had no power to resist the Divine Sword. The blazing light streaked across the sky. As the light flashed, the Dark Divine Priest's head fell to the ground. The Divine Priest of Light picked it up and threw it into the 9 gloom turbid water. Even with the Dark Divine Priest's tenacity, he still let out a low roar of pain. The 9 gloom turbid water in the cauldron began to boil when it came into contact with the power of a saint. The six-winged Divine King above exuded a terrifying aura. The commotion in the east of the city of Divine Kings grew louder and louder. This made the six-winged Divine King's expression turn even uglier. After all, the Archaeosaurus and Bai Xiaoli were 2 Saint Realm demonic beasts that could sweep through the entire sky region. He was now at the altar. The distance between the 2 places was very far. For a Saint Realm expert, it would only take an instant. However, this instant was also for Lin Yu. Lin Yu had been waiting for this opportunity. This was a psychological game. Lin Yu wanted to touch the place where the heavenly phoenix was suppressed before the six-winged Divine King could confirm whether the Archaeosaurus and Bai Xiaoli were at their peak. He wanted to distract the six-winged Divine King. Lin Yu was now at the advanced stage of the Psionic King realm. Coupled with his various techniques, it was not impossible for him to fight a Saint Realm expert. However, the six-winged Divine King, who was at the peak of the Saint Realm, was too difficult to deal with. However, Lin Yu did not show any anxiety. He had great confidence in this 90% chance. 4 hours passed. The Divine King's palace was very quiet. No one dared to whisper. This was because the Divine King's aura had enveloped the entire altar. If he acted rashly, he might be instantly killed as an enemy. Lin Yu was in the crowd. His appearance and bearing were very ordinary. Even when the six-winged Divine King scanned him with his divine perception, he did not discover any clues. Lin Yu had the Divine King's order, a divine item. As long as he didn't reveal it, no one in this world would be able to find him. At this moment, the six-winged God King could no longer hold himself back when he sensed the ripples in the distance. Bai Xiaoli and the Archaeosaurus had used some means to completely seal off the news from that side. Right now, they couldn't receive any news at all. This caused the six-winged God King to become uncertain. Archaeosaurus, I spared you back then. How dare you come back and cause trouble today? The six-winged God King transformed into a streak of light. His vast and mighty aura suppressed the entire city of God Kings. Lin Yu's eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. The time has come. Qi, the Emperor's sword, appeared in Lin Yu's hand. Its biting cold aura caused the surrounding people to cough up blood. They couldn't withstand this aura. Lin Yu, who was in the crowd, suddenly released his aura. His cultivation at the advanced stage of the Psionic King realm was fully revealed. Lin Yu, thief, you still came in the end. The Divine Priest of Light's eyes were cold. When he sensed Lin Yu's cultivation, his expression changed drastically. He didn't expect Lin Yu to break through 2 realms in such a short period of time. He had reached the advanced stage of the Psionic King realm. His cultivation realm was catching up to his own. The Divine Priest of Light maintained his composure. You borrowed the power of the Archaeosaurus and the 9-tailed celestial fox to rescue Sky Phoenix. It's a good idea, but it's wishful thinking. Lin Yu didn't stop. He only shook his head coldly. Unfortunately, your judgment is wrong. His goal had always been to rescue the Divine Priest of Darkness, not Sky Phoenix on the other side. With the advanced stage of the Psionic King realm and the Emperor's sword, Lin Yu's first move was a killer move. Qi of heaven and earth. Endless sword qi appeared in the sky above the deity king's palace. It was vast and mighty, cutting the glazed tiles of the deity king's palace into dust. The divine priest of light stood in place. He had thought that even if Lin Yu had broken through to the advanced stage of the psionic king realm, he wouldn't be his match. But now, with the intense threat of death looming over him, he realized that Lin Yu's strength had exceeded his imagination. The endless saber wind turned into a storm, surpassing the speed of the world. The divine priest of light had no time to react. Puff! Lin Yu and the Emperor's sword shattered, directly piercing through the divine priest of light. 5 large holes appeared in front of him. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Until now, his face was still filled with disbelief. With one blow, the divine priest of light's aura was almost cut off. Hiss! The people below all sucked in a breath of cold air when they saw this scene. The disciples of the celestial region who were nearby were so frightened that they fell to the ground. Some were in a daze, while others were trembling with their mouths wide open. No one knew what they wanted to say. No one had expected that in the city of gods where the six-winged divine king was, there would be someone who dared to risk universal condemnation and save the divine priest of darkness. Audacious! Who is this? Some were shocked, some were confused. However, after Lin Yu had almost completely killed the divine priest of light, he quickly recovered under the time reversal. His aura was blazing again. He stood on the altar without any ripples. It was only then that Lin Yu revealed his true appearance. This person is similar to the six-winged divine king. The cultivators of the celestial region looked at the altar at the same time. Lin Yu lifted the divine priest of light's head and said plainly, "If I have enough time, I don't mind killing you completely." After saying that, Lin Yu threw the divine priest of light, who was about to die, off the altar. Then, he came to the cauldron and covered the divine priest of light with the power of the Emperor's sword. Lin Yu slowly lifted the divine priest of darkness's head and placed it back on the body. The divine priest of darkness's aura was weak. "You shouldn't have come." Lin Yu shook his head. "Senior, I would be ashamed if I didn't come." The divine priest of darkness nodded in relief. However, now was not the time to reminisce. "Senior, I will take you away." After Lin Yu fed the divine priest of darkness an elixir, he made a prompt decision and turned to leave. None of the disciples of the celestial region dared to stop him. Lin Yu looked at one of the disciples of the celestial region who had a fierce look in his eyes. Suddenly, his pupils became dilated, but they quickly gathered together again. After inadvertently finishing the deed, Lin Yu took the divine priest of darkness and disappeared without a trace. "Quick! Open the restriction of the city of gods." At this moment, the disciples of the celestial region came to their senses and immediately transmitted their voices to the disciples on the city wall. However, Lin Yu had the divine king's token, so the restriction of the city of gods could not do anything to him. As the light shone, the divine priest of darkness frowned slightly. "The six-winged divine king is coming. You should leave quickly." The power of the peak of the saint realm was pressing down on him. However, Lin Yu was not anxious. He used not heaven and disappeared on the spot. In the blink of an eye, he was nowhere to be seen. All that could be seen was a hole in the restriction above the city of gods. Chapter 1074. The remnant aura of the godly king's token made the six-winged divine king mad with hatred. The divine item he had been dreaming of had appeared once again, but it was not in his hands. When the six-winged divine king appeared in Heavenly Phoenix's prison, the Archaeosaurus and Bai Xiaoli had already left. Although their strength had weakened, the city of god kings could not stop them if they wanted to leave. Thousands of miles away from the city of god kings, the Archaeosaurus had already brought Yuja Kitami and the others out of the sky region. They did not wait for Lin Yu, but agreed to meet at the Realm Sea. Yuja Kitami was forcefully held and struggled constantly. I'm not leaving, I want to wait for Linyu. Platycodon grandiflorum frowned slightly. Even though she was outside the city, she could clearly sense the terror of the six-winged Divine King's aura. It was definitely not an existence that a Spirit King realm cultivator could provoke. Only after entering the Sage realm could one look down on all living things. Even a Spirit King realm cultivator was nothing but an ant in front of it. Although Platycodon grandiflorum knew that Linyu had many tricks up his sleeve, she felt uneasy when she saw the six-winged Divine King. Unknowingly, her heart had been following Linyu all the time. However, Platycodon grandiflorum had yet to realize this. Foolish! The Archaeosaurus berated sternly. It used its extreme speed to escape quickly. The six-winged Divine King's current realm is increasingly unfathomable. Could it be that it is only a step away from the legendary realm? After the encounter with the six-winged Divine King, the Archaeosaurus could clearly sense the aura that flowed around its body. All of these allowed the Archaeosaurus to deduce many possibilities. With the six-winged Divine King's talent, it was impossible for it to reach that level. It was very likely that someone or something was hiding behind it. Thinking up to here, the Archaeosaurus couldn't help but feel a bit apprehensive. However, the most important thing right now was to reach the Realm Sea as soon as possible. I'll discuss this matter with Sea God King and Linyu later. The Archaeosaurus and the others still didn't know if Linyu had succeeded in rescuing the Dark Priest. This was Linyu's plan, which had been set up as early as last night. For the sake of everyone's safety, Linyu had the Archaeosaurus and Bai Xiaoli cause a commotion at the location where the Heavenly Phoenix was being held. When they sensed the six-winged Divine King's approach, they quickly left. The gap between the six-winged Divine King's journey was the time when Lin Yu's plan succeeded. It was obvious that Lin Yu's plan was accurate. The Celestial Phoenix carried the old godly monarch's secret. The six-winged godly monarch wanted to break through to that realm. His desire for the old godly monarch's legacy exceeded that of Lin Yu. Once he broke through to that realm, he would be the true ruler of this universe. When that time came, he could kill someone with a single thought. Furthermore, the Celestial Phoenix was ranked first among the heavenly demons. Her strength was at the peak of the 3 realms and 5 regions. If she escaped, she would definitely be a threat to him. This was something the six-winged godly monarch would not allow. Between the Dark Priest and the Celestial Phoenix, the six-winged godly monarch would naturally choose the latter. This was also why Lin Yu had said that there was a 90% chance of success. This was a psychological battle. Clearly, 100,000 years of experience had made Lin Yu's thoughts meticulous to a terrifying degree. The six-winged godly monarch looked at the cave entrance, his eyes cold. A biting cold, killing intent froze the vegetation below. As a weak breeze blew past, they turned into fine powder and dissipated. He did not pursue because Lin Yu's aura had completely disappeared after the cave entrance opened. The news of the Dark Priest being rescued, and from under the six-winged godly monarch's nose, quickly spread throughout the entire Heaven region. This undoubtedly caused a huge uproar. The Heaven region, including all the factions in the Realm Sea, were shocked. Lin Yu, he really succeeded. The Master of the Realm Sea sat up in shock. Supremacy Wuya's expression also changed many times, then he smiled and said, as expected of that kid. This kind of news spread throughout many places in the 3 realms and 6 regions. However, what made Yuja Kitami and the rest anxious was that it had already been 3 days, but Lin Yu still had not appeared. Platycodon grandiflorum was very calm at this time. Maybe Lin Yu has some other arrangements, or maybe he can't get away for some reason. Yuja Kitami's face flushed red, and she said angrily, "You speak as if you know Lin Yu very well." Bai Xiaoli's expression was cold, and she raised her head. Now is not the time to be anxious. I have already left a connection in Lin Yu's body. He is very safe. Hearing this, Yuja Kitami and the rest were slightly relieved. In a remote courtyard in the city of the Divine Kings, disciples and elders of the Heaven region would occasionally search outside with artifacts. The six-winged Divine King was very careful, worried that Lin Yu might not have escaped, but was hiding in the city of the Divine Kings. In a remote courtyard, between the cracks of the shattered blue stone, weeds grew. In the courtyard there was a lone well. It looked very ordinary, almost covered by weeds and shrubs. However, there was something else hidden within this well. In the lone well, there was a stone room. After entering, the space was very large. It could be called a stone room, but it could also be called an underground palace. Because this place had been built for a long time, it was already forgotten by people, and now it looked very dilapidated. Even though there were array patterns on it, the walls and other things still collapsed and cracked. In the depths of the deep stone room, the darkness priest who had taken the sacred healing medicine was sitting cross-legged on the ground, and a deep aura circulated around his body. Lin Yu stood at the side, personally protecting the darkness priest. Under the effect of the Divine King's order, their auras had been completely concealed. This was what Lin Yu knew from the map. It was very secretive, and even the living beings who had always lived in the city of the Divine Kings did not know of its existence. This might have been the intention of the person who built it. Although he did not know the purpose of the person who built it, it made things convenient for Lin Yu. While escaping, Lin Yu had already sensed that the darkness priest's body was not in good condition. There was a terrifying power entangling inside, and it was constantly destroying his vitality. This was a trick left behind by the six-winged Divine King. As long as he left the city of the Divine Kings, the power in the darkness priest's body would erupt. In addition, the darkness priest's body was very weak now, and it was very likely that he would die. Therefore, Lin Yu made a prompt decision to create the illusion of leaving, and chose to stay in a secret place in the city of the Divine Kings. He would wait for the darkness priest to recover from his injuries and remove the hidden danger in his body before considering leaving the city of the Divine Kings. After all, the darkness priest was a saint, and with the help of Lin Yu's sacred healing medicine, his injuries had healed at a visible rate in 5 days. However, the trick left behind by the six-winged Divine King still needed a day or two to wear off. The darkness priest slowly opened his eyes and let out a long sigh. "Senior, you're awake," Lin Yu said with a faint smile. The darkness priest smiled. "I didn't expect you to actually dare to come. I would have come here sooner or later. I'm just here to scout the way," Lin Yu said calmly. "That's right," the darkness priest nodded. "Let's go to the Realm Sea in 2 days when your injuries have recovered," Lin Yu suggested. The darkness priest nodded, then closed his eyes again and began to wear off the trick left behind by the six-winged Divine King. In the Divine King's palace, the six-winged Divine King crushed the teacup in his hand. He's not dead. He had already sensed that the trick he left behind in the darkness priest's body was becoming weaker and weaker. Before long, it would be completely worn off. The six-winged Divine King had done this in an extremely secretive manner. He did not understand how Lin Yu had discovered it, or how he had dealt with it. Chapter 1075. What the six-winged Divine King didn't know was that Lin Yu had never left the city of the Divine Kings. 5 days later, the commotion in the city of the Divine Kings came to a temporary stop. However, the six-winged Divine King's prestige had decreased. He was even reduced to a joke in some places. The dark priest woke up from his healing state and stood up. "Young Divine King, how long have I been asleep?" Lin Yu didn't slack off during these 5 days. His aura became more condensed and his strength as a late-stage spirit king was fully displayed. 5 days have passed. Lin Yu stood up. A disciple of the heavenly region under Lin Yu's control had already sent a message. The restrictions on the city of the Divine Kings were lifted and people were allowed to pass through. This was similar to Lin Yu's judgment. The city of the Divine Kings was the core of the heavenly region. It couldn't be sealed for a long time. This would cause a huge loss to the six-winged Divine King's forces. The Dark Priest looked at Lin Yu with relief. Young Divine King, I need to sneak into the Divine King Palace to retrieve something. For the Dark Priest to be so serious, it must be very important. Wait for me here for a few hours. We'll head to the Realm Sea together. The Dark Priest didn't want Lin Yu to be in danger and was prepared to go alone. Lin Yu also understood the Dark Priest's intentions. That item was most likely prepared for him. Lin Yu naturally wouldn't agree to let the Dark Priest, who had just recovered from his injuries, take the risk alone. Senior, I have the Divine King's token. It will be much safer to sneak into the Divine King Palace. The six-winged Divine King must have thought that Lin Yu and the Dark Priest had left. In fact, the six-winged Divine King had sent out a large number of disciples to search for Lin Yu's whereabouts. The six-winged Divine King was about to break through and naturally didn't have that much free time. Now was the best time to sneak into the Divine King Palace. The Dark Priest glanced at Lin Yu and sighed. Young Divine King's growth is faster than I thought. With that, the two figures disappeared. As for his identity, the Dark Priest had already prepared it. The two of them turned into an old man and a young man. They easily evaded the checks and entered the Deity King Palace without any obstructions. Halt! Who are you? In the Godly King Palace, the disciples of the Heaven region blocked their path. I am the fourth elder of the Divine Priest of Light, Xingli. The Divine Priest of Light is currently recuperating. I have come to the Deity King's Palace to report the situation. The Dark Priest's voice turned hoarse as he explained calmly. So you are a subordinate of the Divine Priest of Light. Now that the city of Divine Kings is heavily guarded, please forgive us. Please come in. The attitude of the disciple of the Heaven region became respectful. The elder under the Divine Priest of Light, Xingli, was already a Spirit King realm expert. Although he didn't usually show himself and spent most of his time in seclusion, the disciples of the Heaven region all knew of him. Now, he bowed and invited the Dark Priest and Lin Yu in. Stepping into the Deity King Palace, the courtyard was simple and unadorned. The spiritual spring gurgled, the strange rocks were ugly, and the Yao Qi was so dense that it could not be dispersed. It condensed into spiritual mist, making this place look even more enchanting and extraordinary. Looking at the scene before him, Lin Yu's deepest memories were triggered. However, it didn't affect him too much. He looked very calm from the beginning to the end. I didn't expect you to have such a trick up your sleeve. Lin Yu smiled. The Dark Priest didn't think much of it. The real Xingju has already been refined into a puppet by me. After all, I have stayed with the six-winged Divine King for tens of thousands of years. It can't be wrong to set up some small trick. As he spoke, the two had already crossed the small courtyard and headed straight for the east side of the Deity King's palace. The six-winged Divine King wouldn't have thought that I would hide something in the Deity King's palace. The Dark Priest was proud. An expert who had lived for tens of thousands of years had a demonic mind. They were unpredictable and difficult to fathom. Lin Yu nodded. The Deity King's palace was indeed unexpected. Just as Lin Yu and the Dark Priest were walking in the grand corridor. At the end of the corridor, there was a melodious sound of a zither. The sound was so close to Tao that it was intoxicating. On the lake at the end of the corridor, there was a woman in white. Her slender fingers strummed the zither. She was elegant and dignified. Her figure was graceful and her waist was slender. A strand of black hair fell on her forehead. Her face was indescribable by all the words in the world. It made the entire Deity King's palace pale in comparison. No peerless scenery could compare to her frown. Lin Yu's gaze stopped on the woman's face. He knew this woman. When they were trapped on the same day for 100,000 years, they had a stormy time together. She was also the only woman Lin Yu had seen in his 100,000 years of life. She was also the only woman who had entered his heart. However, when Lin Yu reincarnated and returned to the place where they had met, he couldn't find this woman. This woman didn't seem to be affected by his reset. Or rather, she shouldn't have appeared in the Sky Desert universe. The Dark Priest also noticed the woman and couldn't help but sigh. "Senior, who is she?" Lin Yu felt the change in the Dark Priest's emotions and asked calmly. Just as the two of them were talking, a few maidservants standing outside the pavilion came forward and shouted, "How dare you! Is the Yuqing Divine Lady someone you can look at?" Hearing the commotion, the woman stopped playing the zither. Her heavenly voice was even more melodious than the zither music. "Let them in." The maidservant closest to her looked troubled. "Divine Lady, the deity king has ordered that no one is allowed to come close during the wedding. Will anything happen to me in this state?" the woman asked calmly. "Then go and tell the deity king that the Yuqing Divine Lady wants to talk to a few people." The maidservant was speechless. In the end, she could only agree and let the two of them come to the pavilion. When Lin Yu and the Dark High Priest entered the pavilion, the Dark High Priest waved his sleeves, and a faint black wind blew. The maidservants fell into a deep sleep. The woman touched the zither. The moment she saw Lin Yu, a smile appeared on her face that hadn't changed for 10,000 years. The sun, moon, mountains, and rivers were overshadowed by this smile. "You still remember me?" Lin Yu was a little curious. Logically speaking, time would reset in 100,000 years. And now, this woman seemed to recognize him. The Dark Priest bowed. "Greetings, Yuqing Divine Lady." The Yuqing Divine Lady nodded slightly. He looked at Lin Yu and the woman with mixed feelings. But what he didn't know was that Lin Yu had already interacted with this woman. At this moment, the Dark Priest said, "The Yuqing Divine Lady was your former fiancé." Lin Yu looked at the Yuqing Divine Lady. Their eyes met and time seemed to be rewinding. The immortal couple that had once been envied by the 3 worlds and 5 regions should have been a story of prosperity. Now that they met, they were silent for a short while. The Yuqing Divine Lady's eyes dimmed. "You really don't remember me?" Lin Yu shook his head. "I remember. I haven't forgotten." The Yuqing Divine Lady played the zither and looked at the rippling lake. "You have changed a lot, but the world has changed. We can't go back." "I don't think so." Lin Yu shook his head. The Yuqing Divine Lady sighed. "In 3 months, I will be holding a heavenly marriage with the 6-winged Divine King." Back when the old Divine King was still in power, Lin Yu and the Yuqing Divine Lady were in love. The 6-winged Divine King also liked the Yuqing Divine Lady back then and repeatedly interfered. Until the 6-winged Divine King usurped the throne and Lin Yu was taken away by the old Divine King. The Yuqing Divine Lady was later found by the 6-winged Divine King and imprisoned in the City of Divine Kings. During this time, she also escaped. This was also the reason why Lin Yu, who was trapped on the same day, could meet. Chapter 1076. Lin Yu saw that the Jade Pure Divine Maiden was dejected. He came in front of her. "Then are you willing?" The Jade Pure Divine Maiden shook her head. "I'm your fiancé. I've always been that way. If the 6-winged Divine King didn't use his family to force me." Lin Yu stood beside the Jade Pure Divine Maiden and looked at the lake with her. Seeing the fishes jump out of the water, he slowly said, "No one can threaten my woman." The hatred between him and the 6-winged Divine King was already irreconcilable. Now, he had snatched his fiancée. The old and new grudges had long reached an irreconcilable level. There was an incomparable majesty in his tone. Even the Dark Priest looked sideways. The Jade Pure Divine Maiden looked at Lin Yu with her beautiful eyes. "I believe you, but your Highness, remember that if you die, I die." An hour later, the Jade Pure Divine Maiden played a song for Lin Yu. The zither music that had entered the Tao caused all kinds of phenomena to appear. After the song ended, the phenomena disappeared. The jade pure divine maiden said slowly, "Priest, this is what you left with me. It's not good to stay here for long. You can leave first." As she spoke, the jade pure divine maiden pointed her finger. A jade box appeared under the lake with an indescribable aura. The dark priest took the jade box and nodded slightly. When Lin Yu was about to leave, he turned his head. "Let's go." He knew that the six-winged divine king had already left a trap here. Forcefully taking the jade pure divine maiden away would only expose them. Currently, there were countless experts hidden in the heaven region. Even if the six-winged divine king didn't appear, Lin Yu and the other two couldn't leave safely. There was no need to think too much about the choice. On the way, Lin Yu knew that he had to raise his cultivation as soon as possible. Only then would he have the ability to fight the six-winged divine king in the future. The two walked out of the divine king palace. Now that the six-winged divine king was in seclusion, the two of them easily walked out of the city of divine kings with their identities as elders of the light priest. On the way back, Lin Yu already had an idea. It was clearly impossible for him to raise his cultivation to a level where he could contend against the six-winged god king in 3 months. Furthermore, he would not watch as his ex-fiancée married a six-winged god king. The dark divine priest frowned. "You have broken into the city of divine kings once. 3 months later, the six-winged divine king will marry the jade pure goddess. At that time, the hidden experts of the heaven domain will definitely attend. I'm afraid, the dark divine priest knew that there were many hidden masters in the Qingyun region. Moreover, there seemed to be the shadow of other universes. Otherwise, if the six-winged divine king didn't make a move, the god of darkness wouldn't have been suppressed, resulting in such a situation." Lin Yu nodded. "We'll make a decision after we reach the Realm C." After crossing multiple transmission arrays, Lin Yu returned to Realm C once more. The wind and waves swept across, and the sea was boundless. The two traveled on the surface of the sea. With the Dark High Priest's current realm, it took him a few hours to arrive at the place where the Master of the Realm C was. Lin Yu and Lin Fan appeared outside the huge palace. The appearance of the Dark Divine Priest caused the entire Realm C to tremble, and the palace to shake. Bai Xiaoli, who was in the palace, suddenly opened her eyes. "I'm back!" Yuja Kitami had been guarding by Bai Xiaoli's side. At this time, she rushed out of the palace with joy. The Master of the Realm C also felt this terrifying aura. His expression changed greatly as he stepped out of the palace. Yuja Kitami came to Lin Yu's side. She hugged his arm and puffed up her cheek. "You're finally back." Lin Yu smiled. "It's only been a few days. Do you think so?" Yuja Kitami said in a bad mood. "I'm afraid you've forgotten about me." At this time, the group from the Realm C also appeared outside the palace. The Master of the Realm C bowed. "Congratulations to the Dark Divine Priest for breaking free." The group from the Realm C bowed. They had no choice but to treat a Saint Realm expert seriously. The Dark Divine Priest waved his hand. "No need." 100,000 feet under the sea Divine Dragon in the Land of Darkness sensed the aura of a Saint Realm expert and also woke up. There was surprise in his tone. "I didn't expect that he would succeed?" The Sea Divine Dragon's body that was as large as a star twisted and swam towards the Sea Divine Palace. The Archaeosaurus in the palace was being served by Little Yellow and the people from the Realm C. He was calm and collected, eating heavenly treasures like snacks. The Master of the Realm C appeared. Looking at the heavenly treasures that were being ruined, although his face was ashen, he didn't dare to say anything. After all, the Archaeosaurus was an existence that stood shoulder to shoulder with the Sea Divine Dragon. His status and strength were things that even he, the Master of the Realm C, couldn't compare to. The Archaeosaurus chewed on a spirit herb and mumbled in dissatisfaction. "The aura of the Realm C is really disgusting. Even the spirit fruits that grow here make one lose their appetite." As he spoke, he chewed on another stalk. The Master of the Realm Sea and the others were speechless. They thought to themselves, if it doesn't taste good, why did he eat so much? As the Master of the Realm Sea, his temperament was extraordinary. He quickly regained his composure. Divine official, please take a seat. Venerable Wuya and the others also expressed their congratulations to Lin Yu. At the same time, they brought gifts for the Dark Divine official to congratulate him on his escape. The things they brought were all incomparably precious. Most of them were rare treasures that were rarely seen in the world. After all, if they could be on good terms with such an expert, they might be able to reach a higher level of cultivation. Thank you, everyone. The Dark Divine official didn't put on any airs. However, after the Master of the Realm Sea delivered the gifts, his face revealed a troubled expression. Because when Lin Yu accepted the test, he destroyed the communication sphere between him and the Sea Divine Dragon. Now, it was difficult for him to report to the Sea Divine Dragon. The Master of the Realm Sea expressed his apologies. Forgive me, Dark Divine Official. Lord Sea Divine Dragon might still be asleep. I don't know when it will wake up. The Dark Divine Official smiled. The Sea Divine Dragon should have sensed it. It shouldn't take long. The Master of the Realm Sea cupped his hands. Then, he ordered his subordinates to prepare a banquet to welcome the Dark Divine Official. While the banquet was being prepared, the Master of the Realm Sea, Lin Yu, and the Dark Divine Official were chatting. Endless light filled the air. A terrifying aura appeared again. The Sea Divine Dragon's figure appeared outside the palace. Its body shrunk and slowly entered the palace. The Dark Divine Official gave a simple signal. The Sea Divine Dragon also nodded at him. The Archaeosaurus sat at the side and said, "It's not easy to meet the great Sea Divine Dragon." The Sea Divine Dragon deliberately said, "So the Archaeosaurus is back. I thought you had gone back." The two of them teased each other. The Dark Divine Official and the others only smiled faintly. The Sea Divine Dragon looked at Lin Yu. "You are very surprising. I didn't expect you to be able to save the Dark Divine Official." Lin Yu said calmly, "I wonder if you can fulfill your promise to me." The Sea Divine Dragon was a little surprised but still nodded. "Since you have saved the Dark Divine Official, I will fulfill my promise to help you." Chapter 1077. The change in attitude towards the Sea God Dragon. The Master of the Realm Sea's expression changed drastically. They all knew what kind of force Lin Yu had gathered by his side. They knew that there were already 3 Saint Realm experts, the Dark Priest, the Sea God Dragon, and the Archaeosaurus. Such a lineup was enough to sweep across the entire 3 realms and 5 regions. However, the Archaeosaurus and the others knew that it was still far from enough to truly overthrow the 6-winged Divine King. However, such a gathering of experts would have a far-reaching impact. Whether it failed or not, it would affect the entire 12 universes. Lin Yu didn't show any signs of discouragement. As long as he was given time, it wasn't impossible for him to surpass the 6-winged Divine King with his own strength. 100,000 years of experience had allowed him to grow to an unimaginable level. It wasn't just his talent, but also his invincible heart. The Dark Priest also knew that time was of the essence. The 6-winged Divine King's breakthrough was imminent. If he really reached the legendary realm, all his efforts would be for naught. Bai Xiaoli had already returned to Lin Yu's body. It would take some time for him to fully recover from his injuries. During this period of time, he had to rely on Lin Yu. The moment Bai Xiaoli appeared and revealed her aura, the Realm Sea Lord and the others sucked in a cold breath. Another Saint Realm expert. Although Bai Xiaoli's aura was weak, the Saint Realm aura she emitted was definitely not wrong. The Realm Sea Master couldn't imagine how a Spirit King Realm Cultivator could have the ability to gather the top experts of the 3 realms and 6 regions. Moreover, they could talk to him on equal footing. Not only the Realm Sea Master, But Venerable Wuya and the others were also very puzzled, and even in disbelief. They had interacted with Lin Yu before. Although they knew that Lin Yu's talent was amazing. However, it was far from enough to rely on just this point. The sudden change caused the expressions of Martial Highness Wuya and the others to change. Time was becoming more and more pressing. Saint Realm cultivators were very sensitive to the world around them. They could all sense that a storm was coming in the near future. The Dark Divine Priest knew that time was of the essence. After the banquet, he took the jade box from the Jade Pure Goddess and gave it to Lin Yu. There is a divine item inside. I wanted to give it to you later, but seeing that you have broken through to the late stage of the Spirit King realm, perhaps it will come in handy. Lin Yu didn't refuse. He took the jade box and prepared to go into seclusion. He opened the jade box and saw a fruit inside. It was ancient and had the aura of an Emperor Realm cultivator. Rather than calling it a fruit, it was more like an exquisite piece of art. However, the power contained within it shocked everyone apart from the Archaeosaurus, the Sea God Dragon, and the Dark High Priest. Emperor Fruit! A divine item like this, born in an unknown place of the Heaven Domain, could allow a Spirit King Realm expert to break through to the Emperor Realm. Such a divine item was hard to come by even after many years. Now, the Dark Divine Priest had won and gave it to Lin Yu. The eyes of Venerable Wuya and the others glowed as they couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. They had been in the Spirit King realm for many years. The greatest temptation was undoubtedly to break through to the Emperor realm. The Lord of the Realm Sea was also shocked. Although he was already an Emperor realm cultivator, his eyes still shone in the face of such a precious divine item that couldn't be seen in the world. He couldn't take his eyes off it. If he obtained the Emperor Fruit, the Lord of the Realm Sea didn't doubt that there wouldn't be any accidents if his cultivation rose to another level. Of course, although they were envious, they were still rational. Not to mention that they were on good terms with Lin Yu. Even with the Dark Divine Priest beside him, they didn't dare to have any other thoughts. Lin Yu didn't waste any time. Instead, under the Dark Divine Priest's protection, he prepared to break through to the Emperor Realm in the Realm Sea Hall. The later the stage, the harder it was to break through. Otherwise, many people wouldn't be stuck in the Spirit King Realm or the Emperor Realm for so many years, unable to advance even an inch. In the end, they would exhaust themselves to death in the river of time. Therefore, many people would spend a lot of time stabilizing themselves after breaking through to a new realm to avoid an unstable foundation. Lin Yu, on the other hand, didn't have to worry about this hidden danger. He had the devouring starry sky ability and could completely ignore bottleneck. As long as he broke through, he would reach the flawless realm. Time passed. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Lin Yu absorbed a large amount of glorious energy and adjusted his condition to peak condition. He looked at the Emperor Fruit in front of him and swallowed it without any hesitation. Almost instantly, the Emperor Fruit melted in his mouth, turning into pure medicinal energy that merged into Lin Yu's body. It was a bit wasteful to eat the Emperor Fruit directly. If it was refined into a pill, it might be even more effective. However, it would take a lot of time to gather the supplementary natural treasures. Lin Yu couldn't wait that long. The most urgent thing now was to raise his cultivation level. Lin Yu ran this cultivation method, and the pure medicinal power was integrated into his limbs, bones, internal organs, and every inch of his flesh. Lin Yu looked solemn and dignified. Glorious energy surrounded him, making him look like a true god. As 2 days passed, the faint sound of wind and thunder could be heard from Lin Yu's body. It even affected the entire palace. The Dark Priest didn't leave his room for the past few days. He sat cross-legged outside the room to protect Lin Yu. When he sensed this, the Dark Priest was shocked by Lin Yu's talent. However, when he thought about how Lin Yu was the son of the old King of Gods, it wasn't so unbelievable. Lin Yu wasn't just talented back then. Whether it was his temperament or decisiveness, he surprised the dark priest, who had lived for a long time. 3 days passed. Amidst the rumbling, the seclusion room with the array formation could no longer withstand the power emanating from Lin Yu's body. Crack! The faint sound gradually grew louder. Sinister cracks appeared on the walls of the cultivation room. They spread quickly like a spider web, covering the entire room in the blink of an eye. The dark priest stood outside quietly, watching the frightening scene. Boom! With the last sound, the entire cultivation room collapsed. Beimoyur and the others also sensed the commotion, and they all came here. Breaking through came with risk. Platycodon grandiflorum's expression was calm. She didn't seem to be too worried. She believed in Lin Yu and that he had everything planned out. Naturally, there wouldn't be any accidents when breaking through to Emperor Realm. The stone room's broken walls were sent flying. Lin Yu slowly walked out, spotless and without the slightest trace of wretchedness. The aura of an Emperor Realm overflowed. This made the Realm Sea Lord's expression change. Why does Lin Yu already give me a sense of oppression when he's only just entered Emperor Realm? The Realm Sea Lord had been in Emperor Realm for many years and had already reached Martial Emperor Realm. However, facing Lin Yu, who wasn't even an Emperor Realm expert, he felt that he was facing someone of the same level or even stronger than him. Lin Yu came to the Dark Priest. "Thank you, Senior." The Dark Priest nodded. "You broke through faster than I thought." Now that Lin Yu had broken through to Emperor Realm, he could be considered to be at the top of the 3 realms and 5 regions. As long as no Sage Realm experts appeared, Lin Yu, who had mastered many unimaginable methods, could no longer fear anyone. Although Yujikatami's eyes were filled with joy, she couldn't help but feel a little sad when she thought of the gap between her and Lin Yu growing wider and wider. Even if she tried her best to catch up, it would be difficult for her to do so. However, her eyes soon bloomed with radiance again, and her pretty face was flushed. "No matter how powerful he is, he's already my man, Yujikatami." Chapter 1078. After breaking through to the Emperor Realm, Lin Yu wasn't happy. He knew that the Emperor Realm was still too weak against the 6-winged Divine King. 3 months wasn't enough for him to reach a level where he could fight against the 6-winged Divine King. Thus, he had to find another way. After resting for 2 days and stabilizing his cultivation, Lin Yu bade farewell to the Sea God Dragon. In the Realm Sea Hall, Lin Yu said calmly, 3 months later, I need to borrow your power to kill my way to the upper heaven region. As soon as these words were spoken, the Realm Sea Lord and the others turned pale with fright. 3 months later, they were going to fight the 6-winged Divine King? The Sea God Dragon felt uneasy and voiced his worries. Isn't this too sudden? After all, with your current strength, I'm afraid. Lin Yu didn't mind and shook his head. I have my ways. This time, I'm just testing the 6-winged Divine King's strength. It's not a real battle. Lin Yu naturally knew this. After all, Tianfeng was still being suppressed and hadn't been rescued. The old Divine King's inheritance hadn't been completely unsealed. He didn't have enough power to fight against the 6-winged Divine King for now. However, Lin Yu already had a plan in mind. He wouldn't let his woman fall into the hands of others. The Jade Pure Goddess had waited for him for 100,000 years. This wasn't a number, but a long time. How could Lin Yu let her down? Then, Lin Lu led everyone out of the hall. 3 months later, I'll come find you. Lin Yu and the others turned into streaks of light and disappeared. The Sea God Dragon sighed. He knew how terrifying the 6-winged Divine King was. After all, he and the Archaeosaurus had failed in the past and had holed up in the Realm Sea for tens of thousands of years. After tens of thousands of years, the 6-winged Divine King's cultivation must have improved again. Now Tianfeng was imprisoned. It would be difficult for him and the injured Archaeosaurus to do anything. I hope there won't be any flaws in your plan. the sea god dragon murmured as he watched Lin Yu and the others leave. This was a huge gamble. If he lost, everything would be reduced to nothing. The sea god dragon did not want to get involved, but the old god king had done him a favor. He could not leave Lin Yu alone. After leaving the realm sea, Yuja Kitami asked, "Where are we going now?" Lin Yu replied, "Let's return to the Heaven Alliance first." After a while, they returned to the Sky Alliance. Lin Yu looked at the old friends who came to pay their respects. "Lin Xiu still hasn't returned?" Hearing everyone's affirmation, Lin Yu had a guess in his heart. Lin Xiu's disappearance was very likely related to the six-winged Divine King. Lin Xiu's main body was the Sky Reflection Mirror, one of the 10 great Emperor artifacts. Lin Yu didn't have to worry about his safety for the time being. After that, Lin Yu said slowly, "Prepare the God Creation Grass and Spirit Extreme Root." Lin Yu listed more than 10 kinds of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. "Alliance Master, what are you doing?" Lin Yu said indifferently. "No need to say anything. Go and prepare." The Heaven Alliance was developing at an unimaginable speed. Although these heavenly materials and earthly treasures were precious, it was not impossible to find them. 3 days. Is that okay? Lin Yu displayed the majesty of an emperor. The dark divine priest saw this and nodded slightly. Yang Kai gritted his teeth and nodded solemnly. "No problem." After that, he, Qin Wunyan, and the others left and gathered the forces of the Heaven Alliance to begin searching for the heavenly materials and earthly treasures that Lin Yu mentioned. After everyone left, Lin Yu, the Dark Divine Priest, and a few other top combatants entered the secret room to discuss. The Dark Divine Priest was knowledgeable. Although he did not understand alchemy, he could infer from the heavenly materials that Lin Yu had obtained and the current situation. He already knew what Lin Yu was going to do next. "Are you going to treat the Archaeosaur's injuries and help him recover to his peak?" Lin Yu nodded slightly. The Archaeosaurus looked at Lin Yu. He was a little surprised, but more than that, he was touched. The Archaeosaurus had been injured by the six-winged Divine King. It would be difficult to completely recover from the injuries of a Saint Realm expert with just time reversal alone. Only with the help of pills and time reversal could they succeed. The Archaeosaurus looked at Lin Yu. "You are becoming more and more like the old Divine King." Lin Yu did not answer. They then discussed for a long time. The Dark Divine Priest's rescue undoubtedly increased the strength of Lin Yu's side. After all, the forces of the Heaven Domain were unfathomable. Even Lin Yu did not know everything. The Dark Divine Priest frowned slightly and analyzed. "As far as I know, there are at least 4 Saint Realm experts hiding in the Heaven Domain. They have never shown themselves, so much so that their names have not been left in the 3 realms and 5 territories." This was also why the six-winged Divine King had been suppressed after the Dark Divine Priest was exposed, even if he did not personally take action. However, the Dark Divine Priest spoke again. "I was captured by someone in secret. This person is extremely powerful. According to my speculation, he might not be weaker than the six-winged Divine King." The Dark Divine Priest fell into deep thought. He could clearly sense that this person did not seem to have used the power of this world. Hearing the Dark Divine Priest's analysis, the Archaeosaurus frowned slightly. "In that case, this person might not be from the 12 universes." Lin Yu nodded. "If that is the case, the six-winged Divine King has already colluded with other universes and is planning something big." He had learned from the Archaeosaurus that when the six-winged Divine King broke through, he needed to seize the power of the entire universe. When that time came, who knew how many living beings would be sacrificed? Perhaps 99% of the living beings in the entire universe would die. Lin Yu had already guessed many things. Perhaps the method of sacrificing the 12 universes was brought by that mysterious being. This was the only way to explain why the six-winged divine king's cultivation had improved so quickly during this period of time. With the six-winged divine king's talent, it was impossible for him to break through the legendary bottleneck of the divine king realm by himself. The hands of other universes had already reached into the 12 universes and were secretly helping the six-winged divine king. There was definitely an unimaginable conspiracy behind this. Lin Yu would not let his old friend disappear during the sacrifice. It was urgent to overthrow the six-winged divine king. The discussion lasted for 4 hours. Everyone was extremely solemn. After that, Lin Yu went to see Qin. She was as beautiful as ever. Qin stood there like a beautiful painting, causing one's heart to sway. Qin smiled sweetly. "You're back." Lin Yu nodded. The two of them held hands until the next morning. Qin was on the bed, gently stroking Lin Yu's chiseled face. Her jade-like fingers moved, caressing his strong chest. Qin whispered, "It's time to get up." Lin Yu slowly opened his eyes. Qin helped him put on his clothes. Lin Yu smiled confidently. "After killing the six-winged divine king, I'll focus on accompanying you all." Qin nodded. Following that, Lin Yu began to cultivate. 3 days later, Qin Wunyan and the others brought the heaven and earth treasures that Lin Yu needed. Lin Yu came out of seclusion at this time and did a simple check. Next, he was going to start refining the pill. To be effective on Saint Realm powerhouses, the grade of this pill was already beyond imagination. Chapter 1079. Now everything was ready. At the center of the Heavenly Alliance, in a huge square. Because Lin Yu was going to refine pills, the square was filled with people from the Heavenly Alliance. At this moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on the tall and straight figure on the high platform. The black alchemy cauldron stood beside him, giving off a heavy aura. The patterns on the cauldron were ancient. "Alliance leader, what kind of pill are you going to refine?" someone asked with hope. Lin Yu heaved a sigh of relief. Even though he had the Elixir King's inheritance, the difficulty of refining this pill was greater than anything he had experienced in his life. Even if the Elixir King was alive, he might find it difficult. After all, he was going to refine a healing pill for a saint. Since ancient times, there were only a handful of pills that could be effective for a saint, and no one had ever succeeded. Even the Elixir King's recipe was only a guess. The difficulty was far greater than what the Dark Divine Priest and the others had imagined. Naturally, the Archaeosaurus knew this. "Even if this kid doesn't succeed, I will remember his kindness." The Archaeosaurus were the auspicious beasts of heaven and earth. Although they were usually unreliable, they were still people who valued relationships. Of course, Lin Yu was refining pills for the plan that would take place 3 months later. However, it was a huge price to pay to help a saint recover to his peak. At least, after so many years, the Archaeosaurus and the others had never heard of anyone who had refined such a pill. Moreover, the saint realm was far beyond the imagination of living beings. This level of existence could overlook ancient times and see the changes in history. Their power was unpredictable. It was very difficult to find a divine item that corresponded to this level. The Dark Divine Priest frowned. It would be difficult to completely recover the Archaeosaurus with just one pill. However, he remembered that Lin Yu still had the King of Gods badge. It was possible that the two complemented each other. The Dark Divine Priest's thoughts secretly agreed with Lin Yu. That was what Lin Yu wanted to do. Today, he was going to use this pill to completely step into the realm of Pill King, and even go one step further. Lin Yu's eyes revealed calmness, without the slightest hint of panic. With a wave of his hand, more than 10 rare godly items slowly floated in the void. Although the pure medicinal fragrance was sealed using a special method, the wisps that were emitted were enough to make people feel comfortable all over, as if they were about to ascend to immortality. Saint Creation Herb, the older generation of the 4 great clans, were all very knowledgeable. At this moment, they recognized the natural treasures. At this time, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Every single one of these dozens of medicinal pills was incomparably precious, and it was hard to find even one stalk even after many years. This was such a huge investment. The four great clans were all guessing what kind of pill Lin Yu was going to refine. Could it be the legendary Pill King's lifelong regret, the supreme Emperor-level pill? Is Lin Yu preparing to break through to the Emperor realm? Someone shook his head in denial. The supreme Emperor-level pill is a godly item. Even the Pill King failed to refine it when he was still alive. Lin Yu's achievement in pill refining is impossible. Although they knew that Lin Yu's talent in pill refining was astonishing, it was absolutely impossible for him to become a Pill King at such a young age. In all of history, no one had ever seen someone like him. What they didn't know was that the pill Lin Yu was refining had already surpassed their imagination. It had already surpassed the supreme Emperor-level pill. At this time, someone felt the pressure emanating from Lin Yu, who was about to open the cauldron. That's not right. The people of the four great clans, except for the Northern Moi clan, couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. There was no mistaking that pressure. It had definitely broken through to the Emperor realm. It had only been a few days, but Lin Yu's cultivation had already gone from the Spirit King realm to the realm that cultivators could only dream of in their lifetime, the Emperor realm. The Northern Moi clan looked on coldly from the side. Look at how ignorant you all are. A few days ago, Yuja Kitami had returned with Lin Yu and brought the news back to the Northern Moi clan. This undoubtedly caused a huge wave in the Northern Moi clan, but they had already calmed down. At the same time, they were delighted because Yuja Kitami and Lin Yu were very close. This relationship was enough to raise the Northern Moi clan's strength to another level in the future. They knew that Lin Yu had the Pill King's inheritance and had broken through to the Emperor realm. Given time, his achievements would be unimaginable. At this thought, the other clans looked at the Northern Moi clan with envy. Seeing this, the Northern Moi clan beamed with joy. Everyone was already grinning from ear to ear. At the same time, the other clans were secretly wondering if they should report this to their patriarchs and summon the holy maidens of their clans to discuss matters such as marriage alliances. At this thought, some of the clans could no longer sit still and secretly sent people to report this to their clans. They all thought, since Lin Yu has broken through to the Emperor realm, it's unlikely that he wants to refine a Supreme Emperor realm pill. Now it seems that he wants to refine some kind of pill? The appearance of any one of these precious treasures of heaven and earth would cause a fight and a storm of blood. They looked at the high platform and found that they could no longer see through Lin Yu. At this time, Lin Yu had already activated his pill fire. As he made a hand seal, there was a sense of nimbleness to it. He had thoroughly comprehended the Pill King's inheritance and mastered it through a comprehensive study. Now that they looked at him, he really did have the bearing of a Pill King. With a wave of his hand, the divine bone branch was tossed into the pill cauldron. Violent fluctuations spread out. The scorching heat of the pill fire caused the air to distort. The godly bone branch churned in the cauldron. Just refining this heaven and earth treasure alone took 4 hours. As the divine bone branch turned into white powder, Lin Yu bent his fingers and placed it on the other side of the pill cauldron. Without the slightest pause, the second treasure was tossed into the cauldron. The pill fire rose. The onlookers were all amazed by this method. His technique was so close to the Tao that it was mesmerizing. However, those of the 4 clans who were proficient in pill refinement shook their head. Lin Yu didn't carefully understand the medicinal effects of these treasures. If he tries to refine them by force, I'm afraid he'll only end up exploding the pills. Some people sighed regretfully. Their hearts ached at the loss of so many treasures. Each of these treasures can be used as the main ingredient of a 9th grade pill. Is he trying to refine a 10th grade pill? Some people speculated in disbelief. There was no doubt that this was crazy. Although they had seen Lin Yu refine an 8th-grade pill with his own hands, there was an insurmountable gap between each grade in pill refinement. How could it be so easily crossed? I suggest that the Alliance leader stop immediately. Don't waste these treasures recklessly. Someone who thought that he had a deep understanding of pill refinement stepped forward to dissuade him. However, the faint aura of the dark divine priest had already isolated the crowd from the crowd. Outside of Lin Yu's high platform, no one could get close except for his trusted aides. Chapter 1080. Lin Yu stood on the stage without any distractions. He was as calm as a deity as he moved his fingers to place the herbs into the cauldron. As the last herb entered the cauldron, it was already the morning of the second day. However, the number of onlookers did not decrease. On the contrary, more people gathered. After a night without rest, everyone was in high spirit. There was no sign of fatigue in their eyes. They had been looking at the stage the entire time. "Condense!" Lin Yu yelled softly. The powder and liquid in the cauldron began to gather together. The various pure medicinal powers were about to fuse into one. The medicinal power contained in these spiritual herbs was too shocking. It was difficult to fuse them together. They collided with each other in the cauldron, emitting terrifying fluctuations. In a short 15 minutes, cracks appeared on the surface of the cauldron made of special materials. They spread across the entire cauldron like a spider web. It was in danger of exploding at any time. The person who was stopped had a pained look on his face. Indeed, what I was worried about the most has happened. Due to the fact that the pills were too heaven-defying, there was a strange phenomenon in the sky. The originally clear sky was now covered by endless dark clouds. Lightning was gathering in the clouds. It was frightening. It was as if the heavenly lightning could strike at any time. Everyone's pupils constricted. Some people could not help but retreat. There were also people from the Sky Alliance who began to evacuate the crowd. The pressure from the phenomenon above was too terrifying. It had even surpassed the fluctuations of the Spirit King realm. If it really struck, it would definitely be a catastrophe. Everyone knew that saving their lives was more important than seeing the pills. However, there were also some who took out their Dharma treasures to protect themselves. They wanted to witness the pill-refining skills of the person who had obtained the Elixir Monarch's inheritance. Even if he did not succeed, they would still benefit greatly from his methods. As Lin Yu gathered the glory chi in his hands and slowly clapped his palms together, the herbs in the cauldron began to close together uncontrollably. The medicinal powers collided, causing the stage to crack. Then, with a violent sound, it exploded with a loud bang. Soil and stones flew everywhere. However, under Lin Yu's aura, there was no dust. Lin Yu's expression did not change at all. Everyone who had some understanding of alchemy understood that this was a sign that the pill was about to explode. If he continued to forcefully gather the medicinal power, it was very likely that he would end up with the destruction of the pill and his death. Yuja Kitami covered her mouth, her eyes filled with worry. Archaeosaurus also wanted to ask Lin Yu to stop refining pills. The power of the dark priest circulated in his body, ready to strike at any moment. Everyone present had different expressions on their faces. Those who had some understanding of the Tao of pills were all sighing. The Alliance Master is too stubborn. Lin Lu and the others' expressions changed, but they didn't care. At this moment, he had no other thoughts. In his mind, the refining method of the divine healing pill appeared. This pill formula was complicated and obscure, and there were even some parts that were incomplete. The Elixir King had obtained it from an ancient ruin and had never put it into practice. It was hard to verify whether the pill formula was correct or not. After 100,000 years of reincarnation, Lin Yu had learned many things. He knew that the pill formula of the divine healing pill could not be wrong, but it was too difficult to refine and almost impossible to succeed. The complexity of the process was far beyond imagination. The phenomenon was not that the pill was about to explode, but that the cauldron could not withstand the pressure of the heavenly treasures. Lin Yu had already prepared for this. The moment the cauldron completely exploded. With a thought, a small cauldron rushed out of his glabella and quickly enlarged. It was the Emperor Cauldron. As an Emperor weapon, it was indestructible. Not only could it strengthen one's divine will, but it could also withstand the power of the medicinal power. The cauldron's explosion had turned the high platform into dust inch by inch, and the area around it had turned into a huge pit. Only the center of the pit was visible, and there was a 5-colored light rising, completely obscuring the scene inside. So much time has passed. Logically speaking, the explosion of the cauldron means that the pill refinement has failed. Why hasn't the phenomenon disappeared yet? The alchemists frowned, trying to figure out what was going on. The Elixir King's methods have delayed the process. Finally, someone deduced. It was impossible to reverse the failure of the pill refinement. From the scene just now, it could already be determined. Just as they were shaking their heads, the 5-colored light shone brightly. It directly soared into the sky, and the endless black clouds were scattered, and a big hole was opened in the middle. Sunlight shone down. The Emperor Cauldron slowly floated up into the air. At this time, all the essence of the spiritual herbs had condensed together, forming a brown liquid. It was constantly twisting in the blazing pill fire in the Emperor Cauldron. The remaining impurities were constantly being removed as the heavenly lightning descended. The scene was too shocking. It was as if there was only one cauldron under the sky. Endless lightning intertwined, and tens of thousands of lightning bolts struck down as if it was destroying the world. Everyone unconsciously held their breaths as they stared fixedly at the sky. At some point, Lin Yu had also arrived in the sky. He stood with one hand behind his back. The lightning reflected on his chiseled face, and his clothes fluttered in the wind, as if he was the only god in the world. He pressed his other hand in the air, using the Elixir King's methods. Yao Qi filled the air and continuously poured into the Emperor Cauldron. The brown substance was constantly condensing. A few hours later, under the intertwining of the heavenly lightning, it already had the embryonic form of a pill. The alchemists below revealed expressions of disbelief. Not only the alchemists, but everyone was shocked by this method of pill refinement. A few hours passed. The phenomenon did not fade. On the contrary, it became even more intense. It was already difficult to see with the naked eye. As the 5-colored light turned into a dense fog, it completely drowned the place. Even the dark priest and the others could no longer sense the changes in the sky. One could only smell a wave of pure medicinal fragrance permeating the air. Those who smelled it all felt their spirits rise. It was as if the hidden injuries that had been hidden in their bodies for many years were all healed after the medicinal fragrance entered their bodies. The Archaeosaurus looked at the sky with an indescribable excitement in his eyes. The injuries in his body had existed for tens of thousands of years. Now there was finally hope of recovery. His horn, which was forced to break because of the 6-winged divine king, finally had hope of rebirth. The black clouds were receding. The 5-colored light turned into fog and began to gather in the sky. At this time, Lin Yu's figure slowly appeared. He pressed one hand on the cauldron, his face calm and unruffled. Everyone knew that this pill had triggered a phenomenon before it was formed. It was definitely not as simple as a grade 9 pill. Then, there was only one possibility. It had surpassed grade 9. At this thought, the alchemists of the 4 great families could not help but gasp. Could Lin Yu's pill Dao have surpassed that of a pill king? This was already beyond their understanding. They did not expect an existence that surpassed that of a pill king to be born in this world. If news of this spread, what kind of waves would it cause? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.